Hey there, friends. I have a spine-chilling tale to share with you today, one that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Imagine a mirror that doesn't just reflect your image, but shows a world just a little different from our own. What if the choices you make could change your life in ways you never imagined? Stick around, and don't forget to comment below where you're listening from. I'd love to hear from you. Oh, and before we dive in, I have something special just for you. Introducing LipoSlend, the natural at-home liposuction method that supports healthy and steady weight loss while you sleep. Imagine waking up feeling refreshed and lighter, thanks to this unique formula that harnesses the power of nature. With ingredients like sulforaphane, cis quadrangularis, and acetyl L-Carnitine, LipoSlend works to stop fat from growing and helps your body manage weight effectively. And that's not all. When you order today, you'll receive 2 free bonuses. 1. Flawless Skin Secrets. Learn how to tighten loose skin and banish cellulite after your weight loss journey. 2. Primal Desserts. Indulge in delicious, fat-burning sweets that satisfy your cravings without the guilt. Plus, enjoy free shipping on every order, ready to transform your nights and your body. Click the link in the description below to claim your discounted LipoSlend and start your journey to a healthier you today. Now, let's jump into the story of the haunted mirror. I was wandering through a secondhand store one rainy afternoon when I spotted it. The mirror stood tall and old, its frame covered in dust and cobwebs. It looked like it had been waiting for me. I felt a strange pull towards it, as if it was calling my name. I approached, and as I wiped the dust away, I saw my reflection. But something was off. My reflection smiled back at me, but I wasn't smiling. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I couldn't resist. I bought the mirror and took it home. Once I hung it on my wall, I noticed something strange. At first, it was just little things. I'd glance at the mirror and see my reflection doing things I wasn't doing. If I was sitting on the couch, my reflection would be standing and looking out the window. If I was eating a snack, my reflection would be staring at me, as if it was waiting for me to make a different choice. It was unsettling, but I tried to ignore it. As days passed, the changes became more pronounced. I'd hear whispers coming from the mirror late at night. They were soft at first, like the wind rustling through leaves, but then they grew louder, almost like a chorus of voices. I couldn't make out the words, but it felt like they were calling me. I tried to cover the mirror with a cloth, but it didn't help. The whispers seeped through, echoing in my mind. One night, I woke up to the sound of something tapping against the glass. My heart raced as I sat up in bed. I looked over at the mirror, and to my horror, I saw my reflection staring back at me, but it was different. Its eyes were wide and dark, and it wore a twisted grin. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I felt frozen in place, unable to look away. Then, the reflection raised its hand and pressed it against the glass. I felt a strange pull, as if the mirror wanted me to come closer. I fought the urge, but my feet moved on their own. I stepped toward the mirror, and as I did, the room around me began to fade. The colors blurred, and I felt like I was being sucked into the glass. Suddenly, I was standing in a different place. The room looked like my own, but everything was darker, twisted. The furniture was there, but it was all wrong. The couch was upside down, the pictures on the wall were of people I didn't know, and the air felt heavy like a storm was brewing. I turned to the mirror, and my reflection was gone. Panic surged through me. I was trapped in this alternate reality. I tried to find a way back, but every door I opened led me deeper into this strange world. I saw shadows moving in the corners of my vision, whispering my name. I stumbled into the kitchen, and there, I saw a figure hunched over the table. It looked like me, but its hair was wild, and its clothes were tattered. It turned to face me, and I gasped. The face was mine, but the eyes were filled with sadness and despair. "Help me," it whispered, its voice echoing in my mind. "I'm trapped here because of you." I felt a chill run through me. How could I be responsible for this? I backed away, but the figure reached out, its fingers stretching toward me. I could feel its pain, its longing to escape. I wanted to help, but fear gripped my heart. I ran through the house, searching for a way out. I could hear the whispers growing louder, filling my mind with confusion. I stumbled into a room filled with mirrors, each one reflecting different versions of myself. Some were happy, others were sad, but all were trapped in their own worlds. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. How many lives had I affected? How many choices had led to this moment? In the center of the room, I saw a large mirror glowing with an eerie light. It seemed to pulse, calling to me. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. As I got closer, I could see my reflection smiling back at me, but it wasn't the same smile I had seen before. This one was full of malice, a sinister grin that sent chills down my spine. "Join us," it whispered, and I felt the pull of the mirror grow stronger. I hesitated, my mind racing. I didn't want to be trapped in this nightmare. I wanted to go home. I took a step back, but the whispers surrounded me, drowning out my thoughts. "You can't escape," they chanted. "You're one of us now." Just when I thought I would be lost forever, I remembered the mirror at home. I had to find a way back. I focused on the image of my own room, the comfort of my own life. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, willing myself to return. The whispers grew louder, but I pushed through, imagining the warmth of my bed, the safety of my home. With a sudden rush, I felt myself being pulled back. I opened my eyes, and I was standing in front of my mirror again. My reflection was normal, just me, but I felt different. I had escaped, but at what cost? The whispers were gone, but I could still feel their presence, lingering in the corners of my mind. I quickly covered the mirror with a blanket, hoping to silence the memories of that dark place. But as I turned away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed inside me. I felt a weight pressing down on my chest, a lingering sadness that wouldn't go away. I knew I had to get rid of the mirror, but part of me was terrified of what would happen if I did. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to go back to my normal life, but the haunting memories wouldn't leave me. I could still hear the whispers echoing in my mind, reminding me of the choices I had made. I began to see changes in my life. Friends would call, but I would ignore them. I felt isolated, trapped in my own thoughts. The mirror still loomed in the corner of my room, a constant reminder of what I had experienced. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard a soft tapping sound again. My heart raced as I turned to look at the mirror. The blanket had slipped, and I could see my reflection. It was smiling again, but this time it was different. It looked more alive, more aware. I felt a chill run down my spine as it raised a hand and beckoned me closer. "Come play with us," it whispered, its voice sweet and inviting. I felt a strange pull, a temptation to step closer. I shook my head, trying to resist, but the whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a fog. "Join us. We can have so much fun together." I felt myself moving toward the mirror, my feet carrying me against my will. I was terrified, but a part of me was curious. What if I could see what lay beyond? What if I could understand the choices I had made? I hesitated, standing at the edge of the mirror, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, the reflection changed. I saw glimpses of my life, moments I had forgotten, happy times with friends, laughter, and joy. But then the scene shifted. I saw moments of sadness, choices I regretted, paths I had not taken. I felt tears welling in my eyes as I realized how much I had lost. "Don't you want to change it?" my reflection asked, its voice now filled with urgency. "You can have it all. Just step inside." I felt a surge of temptation wash over me. What if I could change my life? What if I could be happy again? But deep down, I knew that stepping into the mirror would mean losing myself completely. I took a step back, shaking my head. "No, I can't do that," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I won't let you take me." The reflection smile faded, replaced by an expression of anger. The whispers turned to screams, echoing in my mind. "You can't escape. You belong to us." I felt a surge of panic as the mirror began to ripple, the glass distorting like a stormy sea. I turned and ran, my heart racing as I stumbled out of my room. I knew I had to get rid of the mirror once and for all. I had to break the connection before it consumed me. I rushed to the garage, searching for something to destroy the mirror. My hands shook as I grabbed a hammer, my breath coming in short gasps. I could still hear the whispers, still feel their pull, but I pushed through the fear. I couldn't let it win. I returned to my room, the hammer clutched tightly in my hands. The mirror loomed in the corner, its surface gleaming ominously. I raised the hammer high, my heart pounding in my chest, and brought it down with all my strength. The glass shattered, sending shards flying across the room. But as the mirror broke, I felt a rush of cold air sweep through the room. The whispers turned into screams, echoing in my mind. I stumbled back, fear coursing through me as I watched the shards of glass twist and turn, forming shapes and faces. They reached out, trying to pull me in. "No!" I shouted, backing away. I could feel the darkness closing in, the shadows creeping toward me. I knew I had to escape, but the room felt like it was spinning. I turned and ran, racing toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. As I burst outside, the cold night air hit me like a wave. I gasped for breath, my heart racing as I looked back at my house. The whispers faded into the night, but I knew they weren't gone for good. I had broken the mirror, but I could still feel their presence, lurking in the shadows. I didn't know what would happen next. I felt a mix of relief and fear, knowing that I had escaped one nightmare, but unsure of what lay ahead. I could still hear the echoes of my reflection, the choices I had made, and the shadows that lingered, whispering secrets I could not understand. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I looked around, hoping the night would bring some comfort. But darkness wraps around you like a cloak, and I felt its grip tightening. I hurried away from my house, the cool air sharp against my skin. Every rustle of leaves or distant sound sent my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. Looking back toward the house, I half expected to see a figure at the window, staring out at me with those dark, hungry eyes. The neighborhood was strangely quiet. Not a single light flickered in the houses around me. Only darkness. A chill ran down my spine, and my steps quickened. I decided to head to the park a few blocks away. It felt like the only safe place, where I could breathe without the weight of the mirror pressing down on my shoulders. As I reached the park, the moon hung high and bright, illuminating the path ahead. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the erratic pounding of my heart. But the moment I entered the park, I felt a shift in the air, like an invisible barrier closing around me, blocking me from the outside world. Something was off. The trees loomed overhead, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers against the night sky. I found a bench and sat down, my mind racing with everything that had happened. I closed my eyes, trying to calm myself. But that sense of relief vanished instantly. I heard soft whispers weaving through the air again. They were fluttering just outside my vision, like leaves dancing in the wind. "Join us," a voice called gently, sweet and beckoning. It felt familiar, like the voice of my own reflection. I opened my eyes and looked around. The shadows of the trees seemed to shift purposefully, coming alive as the wind picked up. I could see shapes moving just beyond the light of the moon. My heart pounded harder as I realized they weren't just shadows. They had form. Panic surged through me as I stood up, ready to run. But as I did, a figure emerged from behind a tree. It was me, but not me. The figure was a darker version of myself, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile that dripped with malice. "Why don't you come back?" it taunted, its voice lilting like a song from a far-off place. "There's so much for you to see." I stumbled back, nearly falling off the edge of the path. I couldn't breathe. The figure stepped forward, and every inch of me screamed to flee, but I couldn't move. It felt as if my feet were glued to the ground. The figure reached out. Its hand was cold like ice, and I could feel the pull of its darkness tugging at my soul. "Don't be afraid," it whispered sweetly, though the tone sent chills racing through me. "We're all waiting for you. You wanted to change things, didn't you?" The weight of its words pressed down on me, wrapping around my throat like a tight noose. I realized now that the darkness in the mirror hadn't just been a reflection. It was waiting for me, plotting and scheming twisted desires of my own heart. What did I want? What did I truly long for? I managed to break free of the spell, forcing myself to turn away from the obsidian eyes that held me captive. I ran back down the path, my feet pounding against the hard ground as I fled from that shadow of myself. The whispers grew more frantic, a cacophony of voices rising to a deafening roar in my ears. "Stay with us," they cried. "Join us. You know you want to." I sprinted back toward the street lights, desperation coursing through me. As I dashed, I felt the temperature drop suddenly, a bone-chilling cold settling in the air. I realized with horror that I had left my house, but something had followed me. The shadows behind me grew longer, stretching and twisting, and as I glanced over my shoulder, I saw shapes darting through the trees, moving fast like the wind. With every step, I felt an icy breath in my neck, like something was right behind me, and the whispers refused to stop. I pushed myself harder, willing my legs to go faster, but the shadows seemed to pulse and swell, ready to consume me. I turned down a side street, hoping to lose whatever was pursuing me. But the moment I stepped onto the darker path, the whispers escalated. "Turn back!" they shrieked. "You are ours now. You can't escape the mirror." My heart raced as I felt the ground shift beneath me, the familiar street becoming a swirling void of shadows and light. Everything around me started to distort again. The world blurred as I pushed through the terror, searching for a way back to the safety I had hoped for. I couldn't let them take me. Suddenly, I saw the silhouette of a small, glowing figure ahead. It was a child, standing still in the middle of the street. The way it glowed was almost comforting, but as I neared, dread settled in my gut. The child turned to look at me, revealing eyes that were solid black, void of any light. "Help me," it said in a voice so innocent yet filled with despair. "I can't get out." I stopped dead in my tracks, every instinct screaming at me to run. What should have been a plea for assistance felt like a trap, like a trick. My pulse raced, knowing I should turn and run, but I couldn't help it. Curiosity battled fear, and I stepped closer. "What happened to you?" I whispered, barely able to speak. "I was playing by the mirror," the child replied, tears glistening on its cheeks, reflecting the glow that surrounded it. "Now I can't leave. You can help me?" I shook my head violently, backing away. "No, I can't," I gasped, fighting against the fear that threatened to overwhelm me. "I have to go. Please," the child pleaded, voice rising in pitch. "Help me," it cried, echoing through the night. The shadows erupted in response, every whisper morphing into a chaotic scream. I staggered back, realizing that the shadows had begun to wrap around the glowing figure, pulling it into darkness. In a split second, I turned and bolted. I was running blindly now, every ounce of terror pumping through my veins as I fled from the grasping fingers of gloom reaching for me. The pangs of despair echoed in my ears as I sprinted into the familiar neighborhood, desperately seeking the safety of the streetlights. But instead of safety, I found myself standing in front of my own house again. I stumbled to a halt, panic gripping my chest as I realized I was right back where I started. Did I really escape? Were those shadows and whispers waiting for me to return? A weight pressed down on my heart as I took shaky steps toward my front door, dread pooling in my stomach. I hesitated by the door, my hand gripping the knob. In the back of my mind, I could still hear whispers, the sound of tortured souls yearning for release. I could feel the presence of the mirror behind me, an insatiable hunger lurking just beyond the darkness. Should I go inside? I had broken the mirror, but it felt as though I had merely pushed it aside. The remnants of the energy lingered in the air, crackling like electricity, and the eerie energy beckoned me to come closer. Then I heard it, a soft tapping at the glass of my front window. I turned slowly, dread pooling deeper as I saw movement in the darkness. It was there again, my reflection, but no, it was different. This time, it was on the outside of the glass, staring in at me. The twisted grin broadened, and the dark eyes sparkled with a chilling familiarity. "Let me in," it urged, the voice dripping with sweetness that masked a sinister intention. "You don't have to be afraid of me. I can show you everything you want to see." My heart raced. I could feel my feet wanting to move closer, but I knew better. Those whispers, that lure, it was all part of a trap. "Get away from me," I shouted, the words spilling out in a mixture of anger and fear. "You're not real." I turned to flee into the house, but the shadows on the ground surged, weaving together like a living tapestry of darkness. The door swung shut behind me, the soft click echoing through the silent room. I could feel it all closing in again like a vice, and I trembled at the enormity of a truth I had only begun to comprehend. I had ignited something with the broken mirror. It had opened doors to dimensions I didn't understand, paths littered with shadows hungry for souls. I needed to resist. I turned, searching for anything that could help, anything to ground me in reality. I didn't want to lose myself to the whispers and the tempting grief. I needed to find a way out of this dark labyrinth. The house felt different now. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, alive and aware. I could hear faint whispers creeping down the hallways, promising secrets too dark for the light. I ran toward the kitchen, looking for something, anything that could shatter this new trap. I had to break the cycle, to sever the connection, and free myself from this haunting grip. I opened the drawers, searching frantically. My heart raced as I pulled out a knife, its cold steel shining under the dim kitchen light. Holding it tightly, I steeled my resolve. I wouldn't let the shadow me take what little light remained. I couldn't allow it to claim me too. As I stood there, breathing heavily, I heard that familiar tapping again, this time louder and more insistent. The kitchen window rattled, as if something were pressing against it from the outside. My breath quickened, and I glanced cautiously back toward the wall where the mirror used to hang. What had I unleashed when I shattered it? Was it merely a reflection, or something more? Could I even trust my own mind anymore? Suddenly, the whispers twisted into laughter, dark, echoing laughter that bounced off the kitchen walls with a cruel mockery. I stumbled backward, the knife trembling in my grip. "You can't escape yourself," they taunted. "Join the fun. This is your world now." I gritted my teeth against the fear and held the knife tighter, prepared to take a stand against the encroaching shadows. "Leave me alone!" I screamed, my voice rising with desperation. I was screaming for help, but I was also screaming at myself, desperate to push out the darkness that threatened to consume me. That laughter intensified, swirling around me like a violent whirlwind, and I felt the darkness rushing toward me, overwhelming me in its embrace. I would not let it win. I refused to be a puppet dancing to its tune. With a sudden burst of determination, I charged toward my back door, intent on escaping once and for all. I flung the door open and stepped into the night, the cool air stinging my face. I had to run. I had to find a way to end this cycle. I sprinted down the narrow path leading to the park, each step fueled by the sheer terror of what lay behind me. But as I reached the park, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. It was a figure standing in the distance, illuminated under the flickering streetlight. The clouds parted momentarily, revealing the bright moon behind. But something wasn't right. The shape was not just any figure. It was a mirror in itself, glistening with an otherworldly light. And now I understood. I had broken the surface, but I'd also unleashed the entity trapped within. With horror, I realized I couldn't leave it behind. The darkness wouldn't let me go. Not yet. The light of that mirror began to pulse, a small beacon in the oppressive night. But with every heartbeat, it felt less like salvation and more like a beckoning call into a void of chaos. "Come back," it whispered, seductive and sweet. "You belong with us." The pull was undeniable. I felt my feet shifting, wanting to move toward it. Instinctively, I shook my head, fighting against the draw like a moth to a flame. I wouldn't give in. I won't let myself be lost again. I stood, rooted in place, my breaths coming in ragged gasps, realizing that the war was far from over. The laughter rose behind me, an echoing rapture of inevitability. "You're never free. You'll always belong." As those words wrapped around my mind, I screamed out, my voice rising over the cacophony. There had to be a way to banish it, to put an end to this nightmare. I would face it. I would reclaim my life. With renewed resolve, I turned back to the swirling shadows. I would find a way to destroy every last remnant of the darkness that clawed at my mind. With a surge of adrenaline, I stepped toward the shimmering figure glistening under the moonlight. My heart raced with every step as I fought the urge to look back. It felt like I was being watched, a thousand eyes boring into my back, waiting for the moment I faltered. As I got closer, the mirror pulsed again, bright and alluring. It looked almost inviting, promising answers and power. My thoughts wrestled with each other. What if this was the key? What if I could use it to turn back time, to relive the moments that led me here? No, I chided myself, shaking my head, trying to clear the fog that threatened to wrap around my senses. I had to be strong. I remembered stories I had heard about mirrors and the darkness that lurked within them. Tales of people who looked deep into a mirror and saw things they weren't meant to see. Spirits, lost souls, and their own terrible reflections. I had to confront that truth. I couldn't let it ensnare me. With that thought firmly in mind, I picked up a rock from the ground, its jagged edge fitting snugly in my palm. The whispers grew louder as I approached the mirror, the shadows swirling at my feet. "You're only delaying the inevitable," a voice called from the darkness, sinister and cold. "You will give in, just like the others." I felt a wave of cold wash over me, but I couldn't stop now. I raised the rock, my hands trembling but resolute. "Leave me alone," I shouted, my voice echoing through the park like a battle cry. The wind picked up, howling around me, fanning the shadows that danced closer. The mirror shimmered, reflecting not just my image but the swirling, chaotic energy that surrounded me. Each reflection twisted in unnatural ways, as if mocking my determination. With a heart full of fear, but eyes blazing with defiance, I slammed the rock against the mirror's surface. The sound reverberated through the night, a sharp crack that shattered the silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The air hung still, and I held my breath, waiting. Then, the mirror exploded outward in a burst of brilliant, blinding light. I raised my hands to shield my eyes, and as I did, a wave of energy crashed over me, knocking me backward. I fell to the ground, the world swirling, and for a moment, I felt weightless, as if I was being pulled into another realm. But as quickly as it had come, that feeling vanished, replaced by darkness creeping in from everywhere. I blinked against the confusion, trying to regain my senses. "What have you done?" the shadows hissed, their chilling whispers wrapping around me like tendrils, grasping and pulling at my skin. "You've unleashed the curse." I scrambled to my feet, still feeling the echo of the impact pulse through me. I needed to escape this place, this night that seemed to stretch forever. The darkness began to take shape, swirling around me to form grotesque figures with faces that contorted in agony. They reached out with shadowy hands, begging for release, but I knew better. These weren't lost souls seeking help. They were the remnants of the fears I had ignored, the choices I had sidestepped, and the shadows of the life I had once known. "Help us," they screamed, their voices blending into one haunting chorus. "We can't go back, and neither can you." I spun around, disoriented, the park fading away into a night of despair. Panic surged through me as I felt the pull of each figure trying to latch onto my consciousness, dragging me deeper into their nightmare. "Leave me," I cried out, summoning every ounce of strength I had. I threw myself forward, desperately pushing past the wailing shadows as they swirled around me, trying to entrap me. My heart felt like it was pounding out of my chest, each beat echoing loudly against the dread that filled the air. I knew I had to fight harder than ever before. I ran through the park, stumbling over the uneven ground, each step a battle against the entities that hunted me. The shadows followed hungrily, their whispers morphing into laughter, a twisted sound that sent chills down my spine. "You can't outrun us. You're part of us now." Every shadowy figure I passed flickered and twisted, merging into the energies around me, their features indistinguishable but ever-present. I could feel their fingers scraping against my skin, as if they were testing my resolve. I pressed onward, the fear of what lay behind me driving me forward, refusing to allow myself to succumb. Suddenly, I burst from the park into a street lit by harsh lights. Relief hit me like a wave, but it didn't last long. The shadows paused at the edge of the park's light, their forms shifting angrily. I had escaped that portion for now, but I could sense the darkness still lurking, waiting for another chance to pull me back in. Determined, I turned away from the street and headed toward the abandoned building at the end of the block. It loomed larger with every step, its broken windows resembling empty eyes. This place felt like it might hold some secrets, an echo of the chaos that had recently overtaken my world. Perhaps I could uncover something here, a clue to help me understand what I was dealing with. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and I stepped inside. The scent of mildew and dust filled the air, a reminder of what had been once vibrant now left to decay. Shadows gathered in the corners, thick and watchful. I had to move quickly to find a source of energy I could harness against the dark. As I crept through the dim hallways, I stumbled across a room filled with shattered glass and crumbling remnants of what looked like a former sanctuary. An old mirror stood against the far wall, cracked and dust-covered. My breath caught as I approached it. This mirror was different. I could feel the power resonating from its shattered surface, and with it came flashes of memories, dark and twisted. Each shard of glass seemed to show me glimpses of moments in my life, choices made and paths not taken. It was terrifying and yet awe-inspiring, each reflection revealing parts of me I had long suppressed. "Embrace us," a voice whispered, softer this time, almost soothing. "Let us give you the strength to fight back." I hesitated, feeling the pull of the mirror. What if this was the chance I needed? I could harness its energy, use it against the shadows that hunted me relentlessly. But that was the question. At what cost? The shadows outside the room writhed, sensing my vulnerability. "Don't listen. We're your true companions," they urged, their voices a seductive blend of fear and familiarity. "We will show you power." The agony in their words twisted inside me, contrasting sharply with the mirror's call. I could sense the temptation, the seductive promise of what could be mine. But I learned to silence the desires that had once ruled my life. I wouldn't fall for their lies again. I took a step away from the mirror, shaking my head firmly. "I won't give in." The darkness exploded against me, flooding the room with a furious roar as the entities lashed out, seeking to reclaim the hold they thought they had over me. I could feel their rage enveloping me, a suffocating force desperate to drag me back into the abyss. Each voice screamed for acceptance, for me to give in to despair. The walls trembled under the weight of their fury, and I stumbled backward, feeling the shards of hope shatter around me. Choosing to flee again, I rushed toward the exit. I had to get out, BF, or the darkness consumed me whole. As I made my way through the debris, the shadows lashed out again, reaching for me with their chilling fingers. "You can't escape," they screamed. "This is your fate." But adrenaline surged through me, a fire that ignited within my core, urging me to break through their grasp. I barreled through the broken door, sprinting out into the cool night air. I didn't stop running until I reached the corner of the street where I gasped for breath, feeling the sting of tears in my eyes. This fight wasn't over. I knew I had to face whatever lay ahead, confront the darkness that lingered within and around me. I would find a way to rid myself of the shadows, once and for all, even if it meant diving deeper into that cursed mirror's realm. As I stood there, panting, I understood that this was more than a confrontation. It was a battle for my soul. I steadied myself, the fear transforming into resolve. I couldn't back down. I would fight against every shadow, against every whisper, and reclaim my light, no matter what it took. The night was thick with tension as I turned back toward the park with a newfound determination. The shadows loomed ominously at the edges, and I could feel their malevolent eyes watching. I refused to let fear dictate my actions. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the next phase of my journey. The darkness would not win. I refused to let fear dictate my actions. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the next phase of my journey. The darkness would not win. As I approached the park again, I felt the weight of the night pressing down on me. The trees loomed, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers in the dim light, casting creepy shadows that seemed to sway and whisper secrets to one another. With each step I took, the familiar path felt more foreign, more ominous, like an ancient trail leading to some forgotten nightmare. The air hung heavy with an oppressive silence, punctuated only by the sound of wind rustling through leaves. I was acutely aware of the way every little noise echoed around me, heightening my senses. My heart pounded in my chest, each thump a reminder that I was still alive, still fighting. But I also felt the darkness lingering just out of sight, like a predatory animal waiting for the moment I would slip up. Suddenly, I heard a distinct rustling behind me. My breath caught in my throat as I turned. Nothing, just shadows. I shook my head, trying to clear my mind. I couldn't let paranoia consume me. I needed to think clearly. Whatever I faced, I had to confront it head on. I stepped deeper into the park, drawn by an almost magnetic pull. It felt like the shadows were calling out to me, inviting me to join their eternal dance of despair. "You cannot be rid of us," they whispered, their voices a chilling chorus echoing in the still air. "Come and embrace the darkness. Join us in our eternal night." I clenched my fists, shaking off their seductive whispers. I wouldn't fall prey to their temptations. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, each step taken with caution. The trees loomed closer now, and an eerie fog started to rise, weaving through the trunks like ghostly fingers reaching upwards. My instincts screamed for me to turn back, but I pressed onward, feeling a strange compulsion to uncover the source of this malevolence. As I rounded a bend, I stumbled upon an old playground, swallowed by weeds and decay. Rusty swings creaked in the wind, their rhythmic sound reminiscent of lost laughter. I approached cautiously, every fiber of my being on high alert. Then I spotted a shiny object buried in the dirt beneath the slide. Curiosity piqued, I knelt down to uncover what it was. My fingers brushed against cold metal, and I pulled out a tarnished locket, its surface chilly like ice. I opened it slowly, and the moment I did, memories surged through me like a tidal wave. Fragments of laughter, faces I had forgotten, both warm and haunting. But the image inside wasn't just of happiness. It was a glimpse of the darkness that surrounded me, the shadows I now faced. The moment I gazed at it, the playground flickered. The laughter transformed into screams that echoed through the night, engulfing me in a sound so loud it felt deafening. Shadows erupted from the ground, rising in fantastic shapes, morphing into nightmarish versions of children who once played here. Their eyes were hollow, devoid of warmth, filled with unending sorrow. "Help us," they cried, voices overlapping in a chilling harmony. "We were trapped here, just like you." I stumbled back, dropping the locket, but it fell on the ground with a soft thud, still gleaming in the dark. My heart raced as I looked around, the night growing colder, the shadows thickening as they drew nearer. "Leave us," one voice whispered, a syllable stretched through a chorus of cries. "You have the power to set us free." Panic surged through me. I had wanted answers, but this wasn't what I imagined. Would I really set them free, or would I be consumed alongside them? Unsure of what to do, I backed away slowly, trying to escape the haunting vision. As I turned to run, a sudden gust of wind slammed into me, pushing me back toward the children. Their ghostly forms solidified, hands reaching out to me as they sank into the ground, merging with the shadows. My feet felt like lead. I couldn't tear myself away. "Stay," they screamed. "You will be just like us?" With unyielding strength, I forced myself to sprint away from that cursed playground, each footfall pounding against the earth with urgency. The sounds of tortured whispers faded behind me, but an overwhelming sense of dread settled in my chest. I needed to get out of that park and break this nightmare cycle. But as the darkness chased me, I felt it closing in again, relentless and sinister. I raced toward the park exit, fueled by sheer terror. Headlights from a distant car flickered through the trees, a reminder that there was still a world beyond this creeping abyss. I could not let those shadows pull me back in. Just as I burst through the exit into the street, a chill enveloped me, far colder than before. The asphalt felt wrong under my feet, shifting like loose sand. I glanced back, and instead of trees, I saw a wall of darkness expanding, swallowing everything in its path. This was no longer just a park. It felt like a portal, an expanse of despair reaching into my very being. "No!" I shouted, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I staggered into the light of a street lamp, gasping for breath. The light flickered, sputtering as if struggling against the onslaught of dark energies. I could sense the abyss wrestling to break through, the shadows wanting to snuff out that tiny flicker of hope. I scanned my surroundings, focusing my energy on the nearest safe space, something grounded, something that could protect me. A diner stood nearby, its neon sign buzzing erratically. Reassuring warmth seeped from the building, inviting me to safety. I stumbled toward the entrance, yanking the door open with urgency. The bell above chimed softly as I stepped inside, the comforting aroma of coffee and greasy food wrapping around me. For a moment, I felt a sense of calm, but as I looked around, that illusion shattered. The diner was empty, the booze cloaked in shadows that seemed to stretch into infinity. The lights flickered again, and with it, a chilling realization gripped me. I was not alone. In one of the darkened corners, a figure sat hunched and motionless, cloaked in shadows. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was watching me. Its presence seemed to absorb the light, drawing it into itself. I felt my heart racing again, each beat thundering in my ears. "This place," I whispered, my mind racing. "It's a trap." As I moved deeper inside, the lights dimmed further, plunging everything into a gloomy haze. A tingling sensation crept up my spine, and I felt something lurking just out of sight, beckoning me with fingers that were both inviting and terrifying. "Help us," echoed in my mind again. "We know what you seek." I began to backtrack, ready to bolt for the door, but the moment I turned, the front door slammed shut with an ominous bang, locking me inside. The figure in the corner straightened, revealing a face obscured by the shadowy veil. "You've come to the right place," it said, voice smooth and sinister. "We've been waiting for you." My pulse quickened, fear spiraling inside me. The shadows slid closer, seeping from the corners like thick fog, wrapping around my ankles. "What do you want?" I stammered, feeling trapped as the room closed in, breath shallow and erratic. The figure laughed softly, and the sound sent icy shivers down my spine. "We are your shadows. We are your doubts and your fears. You cannot escape us, for you are already ours." I felt a surge of panic rising within me. I needed to break free of this grasping shadow, to escape the pull they had on my mind and spirit. But how? The diner felt like a labyrinth of darkness, every corner thick with despair, every shadow a reminder of what lay ahead. "I will not succumb to you," I shouted, my voice shaking but fierce. Laughter erupted. "Oh, but that's exactly what you'll do. You've already let us in." Suddenly, all the light flickered out, plunging me into utter darkness. I could hear my heart pounding, the sound muffled in the void around me. I reached out blindly, hands desperately seeking something, anything to hold on to. The walls felt slick, almost alive, whispering secrets buried deep within the recesses of my mind. Then a soft glow emerged in front of me, illuminating just enough to see the figure still lurking in the corner. Its smile was wide, eyes glinting with a predatory desire. "All you must do is accept us." I felt the shadows swirl around me, touching my skin like icy fingers. They wanted to seep into my being, to claim my essence and spirit. "I won't," I gasped, trying to push them away, but they pressed harder, as if testing my boundaries. "Sweet release awaits," the figure beckoned, voice dripping with a false sense of security. "Let go. We can show you the power of darkness." "No!" I screamed, willpower surging like a flame within. I couldn't let this consume me. Not now, not ever. With every ounce of strength, I focused on that flicker of light deep inside me. The strength that had propelled me forward, that had carried me through the darkness before. I harnessed it, feeling it grow stronger, igniting like a wildfire as I summoned every last piece of resolve I had. "Get away from me!" I shouted, pushing back against the shadows surrounding me, feeling their grip start to loosen. The figure flinched, its expression twisting into one of fury and disbelief. "Do not resist!" But I pushed harder, and the shadows began to unravel. The energy surged through me like an electric shock, spilling outward and illuminating the dark corners of the diner with radiant light. This time, I would not be lost. This time, I would not let the shadows win. I felt the warmth of my own light expand, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The cacophony of despair that had threatened to engulf me shattered, leaving behind a resonating silence that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. With a final cry of defiance, I thrust my hands outward, the light exploding in all directions, washing over everything like a cleansing tide. The figure recoiled in horror as shadows writhed and twisted, finally disintegrating into tiny flecks of nothingness scattered into the air. Breathless and shaken, I stood amidst the remnants of the battle, the diner slowly unfolding back into view. The shadows had retreated, but the lingering sensation of dread still hung in the air. I knew the fight was far from over, that darkness lay in wait, plotting its next move. But in that moment, one thing became clear. I could fight back. I could harness the light that existed within me. And with that realization came a flicker of hope, a guiding star in the oppressive night. I took a deep breath, steeled my resolve, and prepared to face whatever came next. The path ahead might be fraught with shadows, but I would not walk it alone. The light was with me, and I would uncover the truth hidden within the dark. With each step, the atmosphere shifted, a dangerous tension filling the air. The diner's interior flickered between reality and something twisted, like it was caught between two worlds. The air grew heavier, pregnant with unspeakable secrets. Shadows clung to walls, creeping closer as if daring me to engage with them. I moved cautiously toward the exit, but the sense of being watched crept under my skin. I could feel unseen eyes tracking my every move, hungry for a chance to ensnare me once again. It felt like walking through a thick web of malevolence, and I could sense the darkness breathing just behind me. Outside, the chill of the night hit me like a cold slap. I stepped into a world that felt somehow altered. The streetlights flickered erratically, casting long, twisting shadows that seemed to pulse with life. I could hear whispers carried by the wind, each word barely audible, but they dripped with menace, taunting me with uncertainty. "You'll never escape." I shook my head, trying to resist their grip on my mind. I had to keep moving. The streets twisted and turned in disorienting patterns. As I turned a corner, the familiar landmarks morphed into grotesque shapes. The buildings contorted unnaturally, their windows resembling hollow eyes, watching me, judging me, inviting me to step into their darkness. The night deepened, the sky a blanket of inky black, and I felt the weight of despair pressing down. I quickened my pace, glancing over my shoulder constantly, expecting something to burst forth from the shadows any moment. The air thickened, heavy with a foul stench that reminded me of decay. It was intoxicating and horrifying at the same time, drawing me in as it whispered promises of power. If only I would succumb to it. "Why fight?" a voice echoed, low and sultry, curling around my thoughts like smoke. "Just give in. Let us show you what it's like to truly live." I ignored the lure, pushing onward through the twisting streets. But the shadows followed, relentless and persistent. I could feel their whispers growing louder, cacophonous yet soft. With every step, my resolve weakened. Then I heard a soft giggle, disjointed and broken, a child's laugh that hung in the air like a forgotten promise. Confusion mingled with dread as I followed the sound, drawn forward despite the protests of my instincts. Ahead, A small alley split from the main road, lit by flickering fairy lights strung haphazardly above. The normally inviting glow felt sinister. I stepped inside, heart hammering in my chest. There, at the end of the pathway, stood an old swing set, rusted but eerily intact. An unseen force tugged at my curiosity, pulling me toward it like a moth to a flame. As I approached, the swings creaked back and forth, though there was no wind. I froze, watching the motion, entranced yet terrified. The air around me began to hum, a low vibration that resonated deep within my bones. Each swing's movement felt intentional, as if something invisible was testing me, measuring my courage. Suddenly, one of the swings stopped abruptly, as if someone had just swung on it. "Come play with us," came the whisper, softer now, almost inviting. I felt a pit form in my stomach, realization sinking in. This was no mere swing set. It was a lure, a trap set by whatever darkness surrounded me. I turned to leave, but the moment I did, the ground quaked beneath my feet. The alley walls seemed to close in, narrowing the space until I felt claustrophobic. Shadows surged forth, their forms shifting and twisting, blocking every possible escape. "No!" I shouted, panic bubbling inside me as I pressed my back against the cold brick wall. The whispers grew louder, a symphony of despair echoing in my head, drowning out my thoughts. "Stay with us," they urged, "join the others. It's safer here." I felt a presence breaking through the shadows, a figure emerging slowly, cloaked in darkness. It stepped into the light, revealing familiar features that twisted my heart. It was someone I recognized from my past, someone I lost long ago. But their eyes were different. Empty, hollow, filled with sorrow. "Why did you leave us?" they asked, their voice breaking the rhythm of the haunting whispers. "You could have saved us. Come back." My chest tightened, grief washing over me like a cold wave. "No, I couldn't save you," I cried, feeling tears spill down my cheeks. "I tried. I couldn't." "Join us," the figure coaxed, a faint smile playing at the edges of their lips. "You don't have to fight anymore. We need you." The shadows surged closer, swirling around me. I struggled against them, willpower waging a war against the agonizing pull of the past. Memories flooded my mind. Moments of laughter turned into memories of loss, each one feeling like a dagger to my heart. "I won't. I can't," I screamed, breaking free of the grip they had on me. I pushed forward, scattering the dense shadows as if they were made of mist. The figure cried out, their expression turning desperate, claws of darkness reaching for me in a futile attempt to reclaim their hold. I charged through the narrow gap at the end of the alley, bursting back into the street. The world spun around me, bright lights blending with the deepening shadows, making it difficult to discern reality from the nightmares chasing me. But the shadows were relentless, rising up from the ground, taking shape again with every step I took. "You cannot escape," they taunted, their voices infiltrating my mind, worming their way into my thoughts. "We are part of you now." Panic surged as I spotted a flickering sign ahead, one that read "Courage's Corner" in faded neon. It looked like a safe haven amidst the chaos, a flicker of light in this overwhelming darkness. With every ounce of desperation, I rushed forward, pushing the door open with a hard shove. Inside, the atmosphere shifted again. The familiar smell of coffee and pastries enveloped me, but it was tinged with something acrid, a burnt undertone that hung heavy in the air. Unlike the diner, this place was bustling with shadows, people moving around, but their faces were obscured, shifting as if they were formed from the very darkness outside. "Welcome," a voice emerged from behind the counter, smooth yet unsettling. A figure stood there, the features obscured, but the smile wide and inviting. "We've been expecting you." I hesitated, staring at the swirling shadows that moved around me. "What is this place?" I demanded, forcing myself to keep my voice steady, my eyes darting around as the panic within me bubbled. "Courage's Corner is a refuge for the lost," the figure said, leaning closer. "People like you." I felt my heart race again, uncertainty gnawing at my mind. I'm not lost, I protested, but the shadows intensified, wrapping around my ankles like chains. Oh, but you are, the figure replied with a knowing nod. We all are in one way or another. Here, you can embrace it. You don't have to fight anymore. The darkness pulsed. I shivered, stepping back as I realized I was cornered once more. Every shadow held a flicker of my fears, each twisted figure echoing my doubts. I spoke without thinking, desperation spilling from my lips. I just want to get out of here. Out, the figure echoed, laughter dripping with sorrow. You think there is an out? This is where you belong. Shadows loomed closer, their presence suffocating, pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. Every exit I could see faded, the walls of the cafe closing in like a trap. I spun on my heels, searching for an escape. But darkness was everywhere. It poured from the cracks in the walls and the crevices in the floor, wrapping tight around me as the shadows began to solidify into grotesque forms, faces contorting with anguish. You cannot escape who you are, they chanted, an unrelenting chorus filling the air. No, I shouted back, every ounce of defiance rising within me. I will not be part of you. At that moment, I felt the rhythm of my heartbeat align with the pulsing of the darkness. I remembered the flicker of light I had harnessed before, a beacon of strength in this gathering storm. I centered myself, reaching deep within, tapping into that well of power, feeling its surge. The shadows writhed as I forced light from within me to the surface. I wouldn't be swallowed. The air crackled with energy as I let loose that inner fire, illuminating the dim cafe like a supernova. The shadow figures hesitated, their forms flickering as if trying to retreat. I pushed harder, feeling the building shake, walls creaking against my resolve. "Leave me!" I screamed. "You will not take me!" With a blinding flash, the darkness shattered, exploding into a million tiny fragments that danced away into nothingness. The figures dissolved like mist, the cafe returning to its routine. Its warmth flooded back, drowning out the remnants of the cold shadows. Panting, I stood amidst the faint glimmer of hope that glistened like dew in the dawn. But the battle was not over. I realized the lurking shadows still prowled just beyond the edges of my awareness, waiting for me to falter once more. With newfound courage firming in my heart, I stepped outside into the night, ready to face whatever darkness awaited me. The world felt altered, but I felt different too, stronger. As I walked into the uncertain unknown, I knew that every step I took was a step towards reclaiming my light. The shadows may linger, but I wouldn't back down. I would face my fears, confront the darkness that sought to consume me, and I would discover the truth that reached beyond the terrifying whispers of the night. With newfound courage firming in my heart, I stepped outside into the night, ready to face whatever darkness awaited me. The world felt altered, but I felt different too, stronger. As I walked into the uncertain unknown, I knew that every step I took was a step towards reclaiming my light. But as I moved deeper into the street, an unsettling chill settled in the air around me. The shadows loomed larger, their whispering voices rising behind me. "You can't escape us," they breathed, echoing into the silence. I quickened my pace, each echo a reminder of the ghost that had haunted me for so long. The streetlights flickered wildly, casting eerie silhouettes against the cracked pavement. Each flicker felt like a warning, as though they were trying to tell me something was coming, something terrible. My heart raced, and I could almost hear the pounding in my ears above the whispering darkness. Ahead, I spotted what looked like an old parking lot, the asphalt frayed and broken with weeds creeping through the cracks. There was an old, rusted chain-link fence swaying gently, as if inviting me in. The faint sound of laughter reached my ears, childlike and innocent. It pulled at me with a sweetness that was jarringly inappropriate given the atmosphere around the deserted lot. I hesitated, an instinctive trepidation clawing at my insides. "It's just an empty lot," I muttered to myself, ignoring the warnings of my mind. The urge to investigate was overwhelming. Moving closer to the fence, I peered through the gaps, scanning the shadows and debris. That's when I saw it, an old merry-go-round, its paint chipped and faded, sitting alone in the center of the lot. The eerie laughter intensified, ringing out again, ringing in my ears, mingling with the sound of rust creeping from the carousel, too creaky yet playful. It was as if the spirit of childhood itself had taken up residence in this forsaken relic. My fingers brushed the cold metal of the fence as I pushed through a hole. The moment I stepped onto the worn ground, the laughter came to a stop. Silence descended thick and oppressive. Goosebumps erupted across my skin. I could sense something shifting in the air, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation. Approaching the merry-go-round, I was struck by the stillness. Its once vibrant colors were now dull, a funeral of joy in a forgotten world. The ground beneath me seemed to tremble as if reacting to my presence. I cautiously reached out, placing my hand against the cold metal. Suddenly, it began to turn slowly, as if activated by some unseen force. The whirring sound of the mechanism filled the air, echoing the faint laughter that had vanished moments before. I stepped back, pulse racing, dread creeping back into my heart. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice breaking slightly, betraying the fear I fought to suppress. No response. Shadows shifted, slinking around me, pulling closer. I could feel them surrounding me again, creeping into the corners of my vision, hungry and relentless. Then, before I realized what was happening, the merry-go-round began to speed up, its movement becoming a blur of rusted metal and faded colors. Beneath the spinning, I thought I saw shapes forming, dark silhouettes of children grasping the bars, their faces obscured by shadows. A whirlwind of giggles filled the air once more, sounding happy yet sinister, and the joyous spirit turned manic, echoing through the empty lot. I stumbled back a few paces, heart pounding painfully in my chest. The shadows around me began to morph into figures, children playing, their eyes glinting with an otherworldly light. "Come play," they shouted in unison, the sound piercing through the air like a knife. Their voices held a sweet lilt, but beneath that sugary surface lurked a chilling undertone, spinning a web of horror around me. "Join us," a voice called, no longer childlike but warped gravelly. The urgency in their pitch sent shivers crawling down my spine. The merry-go-round slowed, the shadows pressing closer, inviting me to join their dark games, to succumb to the madness that seeped from the very ground. I knew better. I had fought hard to break free, and yet the allure was powerful. My feet felt rooted to the ground, the urge to join them almost overwhelming. "This isn't right," I shouted, forcing myself to turn away. The laughter turned mocking, heavy with disdain. "You can't escape," echoed the children once more, their giggles unraveling into something monstrous. Shadows surged toward me, resolving into the twisted figures of childish joy, laughter stark against their ghastly presence. Instinct kicked in, and I ran. I sprinted through the gaps in the fence, heart racing against the onslaught. The shadows followed, relentless and swift, filling the empty air behind me with their wicked giggles, the sound of children who never grew up. I stumbled back onto the street, breathless and terrified. Looking back, I could see the merry-go-round shining faintly under the streetlights, now still, but with an unsettling life of its own. I felt its pull, that familiar whisper of "come back," beckoning me, tugging insistently at the edges of my mind, but I shook it off. "I won't go back," I vowed, forcing determination into my voice as I moved forward. But the night was far from over. The shadows shifted like living smoke, curling around me in serpentine shapes. Each step felt heavier, my energy waning as they wrapped tighter around my limbs, slowing me down, eroding my willpower. In a moment of clarity, I turned abruptly into a narrow alley, hoping to break their hold. The alley felt suffocating and narrow, as if the walls pushed against me, squeezing tighter with every step. Small, flickering lights glimmered at the far end, offering a distant glimmer of hope against the twilight shadows. I pressed onward, the flickering lights brightening in my vision, filling me with a tentative sense of hope. A sense that maybe this time I could escape the clutches of this nightmare. However, as I neared the light, my heart sank. The lights flickered off one by one, revealing a crumbling doorway, dark and foreboding. Cautiously, I approached, peering inside. The doorway led into a decrepit building, the air inside thick with dust and stale air, a graveyard of forgotten memories. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades, derelict, yet alive with shadows whispering against the walls. As I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening thud, a finality that echoed like a death knell. The warmth of life faded, replaced by the chill of dread. The building sighed around me, as if it were waking up, stirring from a long slumber. Shadows danced along the walls, slithering away from the growing light of my presence, as if I were an intruder in their dark domain. "Welcome," came a voice from the depths of the shadows, drawn out and haunting. There was an emptiness in it, a longing that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "You shouldn't have come here." The shadows deepened, stretching toward me like dark fingers, reaching for my very soul. The air thickened, making it hard to breathe. "I need to leave," I shouted, panic rising in my throat. But instead of an answer, I was met with only chilling laughter that reverberated through the building. "Leave," the voice echoed mockingly, growing louder. "You're just getting started." Suddenly, the floor beneath me groaned and shifted, as if the wood itself was alive. I stumbled, trying to regain my balance as the shadows swirled faster, surrounding me in an inescapable cocoon. The walls began to close in, and a single beam of light broke through a crack overhead, illuminating a grotesque mural of twisted faces and desperate expressions. My heart raced as I backed against the wall, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding around me. I could feel the pulse of the darkness, the power it wielded, and nightmarish visions flashed before my eyes. Flickers of memories long forgotten, moments of fear and sorrow, and faces melting into shadows danced behind my eyelids. "You can join them," the voice cooed, its tone dripping with seduction. "It's as simple as letting go." I felt myself drawn towards it, the weight of despair threatening to crush my spirit. But deep down, I clung to the last vestiges of my strength. "No, I won't give in," I declared, pushing back against the dark tide. The laughter shrieked, a cacophony of voices rising, overwhelming me. Yet something within me began to spark again, igniting the fight that had carried me this far. I willed the warmth inside me to flare back to life, to banish the shadows threatening to consume me. With a renewed sense of purpose, I closed my eyes and focused on that flicker of light, the strength that had guided me before. I drew it up from the depths of my being, feeling it pulse, feel it heat, ready to burst forth against the encroaching darkness. As I opened my eyes, a blinding radiance exploded from my core, illuminating the shadows. The cacophony of laughter fell silent, the oppressive darkness recoiling as though burned. "You will not have me," I shouted, rage fueling my light. In a brilliant flash, the walls trembled, shadows scattering like dust in the wind. I pressed forward, shoving through the remnants of that dark realm, bursting out of the old building into the night air, feeling the cool breeze wash over me like a cleansing wave. Yet even as I emerged, a cold whisper lingered in my ear, a promise that the battle was far from over. "We will always be here, waiting." I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. The darkness would come again, but I was ready for whatever horrors awaited. I wouldn't let fear dictate my life. I had gone too far and fought too hard to turn back now. With every heartbeat, I took another step into the night, not just into a world haunted by the shadows of the past, but towards my destiny, my fight against the darkness that lay ahead. Yet, as I ventured deeper into the darkness, a sense of foreboding prickled at my skin. The night became still. The air hung thick, heavy with something unseen, a tension that made my heart race wildly. I walked cautiously, trying to stay aware of every sound around me. The shadows seemed to twist and pulse, moving not just with the wind, but as if they had intentions of their own. Suddenly, I heard it, a soft, muffled sobbing coming from somewhere in the distance. It stopped me in my tracks, my heart pounding as I strained to locate the source. The sobs echoed out, raw and vulnerable. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to turn back, but that part was dwarfed by an overwhelming urge to find the source and help. I moved toward the sound, the sobs growing louder, yet seemingly more chaotic, like a tangled mess of sorrow. Stepping cautiously, I found a narrow path obscured by dark foliage. Shadows draped over me as I pushed through the thicket, leaving behind the familiarity of the moving streets. As I walked, the sobs shifted to whispers, entwining with the rustling leaves, weaving together a tale of grief. "Help us," they pleaded, full of desperation and pain. Each word lured me deeper, creating a wicked spell of intrigue that tangled around my heart, drawing me into the folds of the night. Emerging into a small clearing, I found the source of the sound, a dilapidated swing set, creaking gently in the breeze, devoid of any light, surrounded by ethereal mist that danced around the ground like the spirits of the lost. It should have felt empty, but laughter mingled with the sorrow, fragments of joy that sent chills racing up my spine. In the dim light, I noticed forms gathered near the swings, indistinct shapes swaying back and forth, their outlines flickering as though they were made of smoke. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice sounding small against the oppressive weight of the shadows. The figures turned, revealing sorrowful faces twisted in expressions of loss, their mouths moving without sound. Their eyes were dark voids, pools of despair that bore into my own, sending a wave of dizziness crashing over me. "You don't belong here," one whispered, its voice soft yet haunting, like the echo of something forgotten. "I'm here to help," I replied, though a quiver trembled in my voice. "What happened?" They began to float closer, using the swings as if they needed them for balance. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, as if they couldn't quite remember how to walk. "We lost our way," another one murmured, fingers pointing toward the shadows encircling the clearing. "They took our light." Panic began to creep in as I sensed movement in the darkness beyond the clearing. Something watching, something waiting. "I need to go," I said, stepping back. "You need to find your light again." The figures crowded closer, their whispers growing into an oppressive din, echoing around me. "Stay," they cried in unison, desperation mingling with menace. "You can join us. You can help us find it." With their words, the air shifted dramatically. The night grew colder, and the shadows lengthened as if they were reaching for me. My instinct screamed to flee. I turned to run, but stopped short when a figure coalesced from the darkness. A woman, her face obscured by a veil of shadow. "Stay with us," she beckoned, her voice smooth but laced with something cold. "You're meant to be here." "Please," I stammered, feeling my breath quicken as dread raced through my veins. "I don't belong here." But her shadowy fingers stretched toward me, and I could feel their icy grasp wrapping around my heart, squeezing tighter as they pressed in. "You have a choice," she whispered, voice like silk dragging over gravel. "Embrace the darkness, or watch it consume you." The shadows tightened, and I could see their silhouettes forming monstrous shapes, snapping and shifting in my peripheral vision. My heart thundered in response. I couldn't let them take me too. Summoning any last scrap of courage, I tore free of their grip. Panic propelled me back through the thicket, leaving the clearing and its haunting sorrow behind. Emerging back onto the street, the shadows whirled around me angrily, muttering and screeching, clawing at me with phantom hands. I ran faster, my feet pounding against the pavement, trying to escape their grasp. Then, a sharp laughter rang out, cruel and echoing. "You cannot run," it taunted, sending shivers down my spine. My surroundings distorted, the world shifting as the shadows warped reality, tearing at the seams of my sanity. I paused to breathe, but the world began to spin, the edges of my vision darkening. It felt as if something was pulling me back into the depths, deeper into despair. I gritted my teeth, determined not to let it win. I focused on the flickers of hope that still existed, tiny memories of light that bolstered me against the oncoming tide of despair. The laughter turned into a ringing chorus, forming a wall of chaos. As the darkness encroached, I envisioned that warmth building inside me, fueling my resolve despite the shadow's grasp. A sudden urge surged within, and with all my strength, I shouted, "I won't let you take me." The shadows recoiled, the laughter turning into shrieks of rage. I could feel their anger folding around me, but I stood firm. "You cannot have me," I yelled again, the power of my voice cutting through the cacophony of whispers. The air grew charged, a palpable energy swirling around as I let that inner light burst forth once more. A radiant glow emanated from me, shattering the oppressive darkness that threatened to engulf me. Tendrils of darkness burn away with the light, revealing the true landscape that lay hidden beneath the shroud of fear. But just as victory felt near, a deeper shadow emerged, towering over me. Its form twisted in ways that defied reason, a mass of darkness swirling with eyes that glinted menacingly in the faint light. Thousands of predatory gazes locked onto me. "You think you can defy me?" it growled, the voice thick with malice, reverberating throughout the air, deep and hollow, like echoes from an ancient tomb. My strength wavered, but before despair could take hold, I bared the glowing flickers inside me. Focusing on that warmth, I knew that even in the coldest shadows, I could find my way back to the light. "I don't fear you," I shouted defiantly, willing the warmth to expand, determined to face this darkness head-on. As the shadow lunged for me, I released the energy I had cultivated, flooding the space with brilliance. It clashed against the darkness, causing a blinding explosion that shook the very ground beneath me. Light and dark collided, dramatic and fierce, creating a dizzying spectacle that finally shattered the grip of fear that had held me. When the light faded, I found myself once again in that abandoned street, panting and disoriented. I glanced around, feeling the air shift, the darkness retreating to the edges of my vision. The ground trembled beneath me as remnants of shadows fled into the cracks they slithered from, their insidious whispers fading once again. Yet I knew better than to let my guard down. Now more than ever, I understood that though I had beaten back the darkness for the moment, it would return, stronger and eager to reclaim its hold. I steeled myself, determined to stand firm against it. Taking a deep breath, I faced the lonely street ahead. The moon hung high, casting its glow over the remnants of the chaos I had just witnessed. My heart thudded, but now there was purpose behind it. I would uncover whatever secrets this night held, confront the darkness that lingered, and summon every ounce of strength to break free from its suffocating grip, for I had tasted the fear, and I would not let it win. With cautious determination, I pressed forward into the uncertain night, ever ready for the haunting shadows that still awaited their opportunity. Each step felt heavier, as if unseen forces tried to pull me back into the depths of the darkness I had just escaped. The streetlights flickered around me, casting haunting, elongated shadows that slinked and danced in my peripheral vision. It felt like watching a slow-motion horror movie where the characters know something terrible is about to happen, and yet they walk blindly into it anyway. As I moved deeper into the dimly lit corridor of trees lining the street, a soft rustle broke the silence. The sound was like dry leaves skittering across pavement on an autumn day. But this rustling was different, more deliberate, almost like footsteps creeping stealthily behind me. Stopping, I turned slowly, my heart galloping in my chest, searching the deepening shadows for any sign of movement. The air grew heavier, thick with tension, and the night seemed to hold its breath, surrounding me in an eerie stillness. I squinted into the darkness, trying to make sense of the silhouettes flitting just beyond reach. They felt alive and sentient, lurking beyond the veil in a waiting game of predator and prey. I resumed walking, hurriedly this time, pushing aside the feeling of being watched. But the sensation clung to me like a sticky web, The whispers began again, softer this time, swirling and swirling, almost like a chant. "Come play with us," they murmured, the voices layered and haunting. A chill slithered down my spine as I glanced over my shoulder again. But there was nothing, just shadows that seemed to pulse in anticipation. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the silence, echoing through the still night, cutting through the whispering voices like glass. My blood ran cold as I turned toward the sound, heart pounding violently in my chest. That sound wasn't far away. It came from the old playground I had passed just moments ago. I couldn't ignore it. I had to find out who or what was in danger. I sprinted back the way I had come, the shrill cries growing louder, more frantic. The air felt charged with energy crackling against my skin. As I approached the playground, the moonlight illuminated the swing set, casting long shadows that twisted like fingers reaching out to ensnare me. There, lying on the ground, were small, abandoned toys. A doll head, a toy car, a saw blade almost rusted over, and a collection of unidentifiable scraps that looked like remnants of play. My heart sank. I crept closer, dread creeping in. The swings rocked eerily, moving back and forth as if pushed by an unseen hand. "Help us!" The voices echoed once more, now drowning in sorrow and desperation. "We're still here." I could see faint shapes darting about the edges of the playground, gray figures lost in the shadows. I instinctively took a step back, the urge to flee bubbling to the surface again, but a pull drew me closer, as if the shadows were beckoning me to join them. "What happened?" I called out, my voice shaking and swallowed by the dark. "Where are you?" No reply came, just the chilling laughter of children swirling around me again, echoing in ever-growing waves. I wanted to run, to escape this twisted mockery of innocence, but my feet felt glued to the ground. The little figures stepped closer, revealing their features, their eyes wide and empty, mouths twisted into smiles that didn't reach their faces. They circled me, their laughter rising and falling like a dark tide, wrapping around me tightly. "Join us," they squealed, their voices a chaotic symphony that sent shudders through my core. "It's fun here." I could feel the air growing colder, the shadows thickening as they pressed in closer, weaving a confounding maze of despair. I fought the rising panic, trying to remind myself that I could break free. "I just want to help," I shouted, voice breaking, but they only giggled, harsh and monstrous. "You don't need to help," one child's voice grinned, bitterness dripping from every word. "You just need to let go." Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled, the swings creaking more violently, and the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. The playground shifted, the world blurring, morphing into a nightmarish landscape. I turned to escape, but the figures lunged forward, their hollow eyes boring into me, pulling me into their twisted realm of despair. "You can't run from fate," they screeched, voices clawing at my sanity. I stumbled, nearly falling but catching myself just in time. Reality twisted, colors bleeding into each other as shadows swirled. It felt like being pulled apart at the seams, a suffocating weight pressing down. Just as I thought I would be consumed by it all, I remembered that warmth inside me, the flicker of light I had fought so hard to keep alive. Gathering every ounce of strength, I stepped back, forcing that light deep down to the surface. "I won't let you take me," I screamed, letting the light pulse through me, illuminating the thick darkness, threatening to consume me. The shadows screeched in rage, recoiling from the sudden burst. I pushed forward, feeling the warmth surge with power, and with it, the shadows receded slightly, revealing more of the playground. In that breath of clarity, I saw them, the twisted figures of children, anchored to their sorrow, bound by the despair that wrapped them in shadows. "You don't have to stay here." I reached out, urgency taking over as I spoke. "There's a way back. You can find your light again." As I stood there, the shadows seemed to hesitate, murmurs of contemplation slipping from their spectral lips. "Join us," they whispered again, softer this time, a hint of fear threading their words. fear of what lay beyond the darkness. Stay in the dark with us. But the suffocating weight had lifted just enough for me to feel the cool, fresh air beyond the playground. No! I cried, shaking my head fiercely. This isn't your fate. You are not lost, and you don't have to be afraid. A flicker of hesitation crossed their faces, the swirling darkness of their forms wavering as if my words reached them. We're just kids, one murmured, its voice fragile, pulling at the edges of my heart. We got lost in the dark. Then let me help guide you back, I urged, taking a step forward. You can escape this place. I could see them now, the fear in their hollow eyes beginning to fade, replaced by the glimmer of hope that tried to press through the shadows. A moment stretched into eternity, silent anticipation hanging in the air. But just as it seemed I was breaking through, the air shifted once again, dark tendrils creeping back, trying to reclaim their hold. The cacophony of whispers swelled once more, a disorienting wave that crashed against my resolve. Don't listen! One of the figures cried out, the panic in its voice startling against the turmoil. You'll get lost too. A maelstrom of chaos erupted, the shadows surrounding me tightening. I felt myself being pulled back into their suffocating embrace as I struggled to hold my ground. I will fight for you, I yelled, summoning that warmth once more, letting it pulse through my veins with fervor. Enough games, bellowed the looming shadow, its voice low and suffocating. The ground shook violently, and I fell to my knees, fighting the urge to surrender to the encroaching darkness. I knew, deep in the pit of my stomach, that I had to make a choice, to either succumb to the creeping dread or push forward into the darkness and save not only myself but those still trapped here with me. Fight! I roared against the shadows, summoning all the light within me, feeling it flare brighter, pushing out against the consuming shadow. Each heartbeat felt like a drum, every pulse an echo of defiance, tearing through the air as I stood against the tide of darkness. That's it, rang out a small voice amidst the noise, a chilling clarity breaking through the chaos. We can help. Instinctively, I reached out for the shadows, feeling palpable fear mingling with my own desperation. You can break free, I shouted, my voice hoarse and raw. Together, we can fight. In that moment, as I extended my fingers toward the flickering shadows encircling me, I felt a shift. A flicker of light ignited in the depths, a bond of connection that felt more tangible than fear itself. Slowly, I felt them begin to encircle me, forming a circle of support. Together, perhaps we could illuminate the truth of the shadows, banishing darkness from this playground of lost souls. As my light expanded, I could see the confusion and uncertainty in their hollow eyes, watching as I fought against the consuming nothingness. Join me, I urged, my heart racing as the tremors of darkness began to falter. Cling to the light, feel its warmth, find your way back. I closed my eyes tightly, imagining all the laughter and joy I had experienced before the darkness crept in. The warmth in my chest grew, spreading outwards, weaving through the shadows around me. Remember your light, I cried, pouring every ounce of love I could muster into the air, that warmth igniting a flicker of hope in the children before me. As their figures began to gather, they reached out, trembling lights flickering after me, intertwining with my warmth like stars in a night sky. The darkness roared, surging back with unforgiving force, but now it met an army of defiance. I'm not afraid of you, I declared, the light bursting forth like a supernova. The force of it illuminated the playground, revealing the twisted faces trapped in darkness, but now their expressions shifted. Hope glimmered behind their hollow eyes as they joined me in the fight, reaching for the light, voices intertwining in a chorus of defiance. With renewed strength, we pushed against the shadows, light colliding spectacularly with the darkness. The figures began to grow clear, their features illuminating as they grasped the warmth reaching out to them. Together, we stood firm against the overwhelming tide. This is not the end, I shouted, knowing we could prevail. The night trembled, light and darkness spiraling around each other in a dizzying dance of fear and hope. The shadows howled in agony as we grew stronger, a vibrant pulse radiating from our united front, illuminating every corner of the playground, breaking the chains that bound the lost children to their fate. But just as victory felt tangible, the twisted form of the shadow surfaced again, looming larger than before, its void-like eyes glaring at us with a hunger that made my stomach drop. "You think you can outshine me?" it thundered, its voice a cacophony that threatened to unravel everything we had achieved. "Together, we will shine," I countered, turning back to the flickering figures now standing beside me, their light intertwining in wild brilliance, each glow stronger with determination. We began to chant, channeling our collective energy, voices rising above the fray. The vibrations of our defiance trembled through the air, shaking the very ground beneath our feet. I could feel it happening, feel the shadows shrinking back. But just when I thought we could emerge victorious, a shockwave hit us, rippling like thunder through the playground. Darkness swelled, almost as if it were breathing in, drawing strength from the night around us. The figures beside me shrank back instinctively, fear flickering in their eyes. "Stay strong," I pleaded, my own voice wavering as the darkness roared louder, desperate to reclaim its hold. The shadows twisted, shifting into monstrous forms, their claws reaching out, trying to drag us back into despair. I could feel them trying to dig into my heart, deeper and deeper, but I pushed back hard against the encroaching abyss, my determination flaring brighter, refusing to let this be the end. Drawing from that warmth deep inside me, I raised my hands, energy flowing through my fingertips, pooling outward and connecting with the flickering lights of the children. "Remember who you are," I yelled, pouring every bit of my heart into the declaration. "You are not lost, and you will never be lost again." There was a hush, a moment of stillness, and then it happened. The sounds of laughter began to entwine with our chants, building an atmosphere that filled the air with an electric current, pushing back against the dark. "Join us," I rallied, feeling their hope marching alongside mine as the air crackled with newfound strength. With that connection, we surged forward, a wave of brilliance that engulfed the playground. The shadow screamed, its voice caught between rage and agony, and I felt the darkness begin to crumble around us. One final push, one last desperate effort to reclaim our light. "Together, we can do this," I yelled, feeling the wave of energy cresting from the lights around me, mingling with my own desperate warmth. With newfound determination, I summoned every ounce of that inner spark, feeling it coalesce into a blinding force ready to push back the shadows. The air shimmered, vibrating with potential as I and the children moved forward, a solid front against the encroaching darkness. But then, as we charged toward the looming shadow, the ground quaked beneath us, throwing me off balance. The playground began to shift, swings creaking and swaying as if caught in a tempest. Time itself felt like it was unraveling, moments stretching into what felt like hours, as the very fabric of reality twisted. The shadows roared and lashed out, tendrils snaking toward me, brushing against my skin like icy fingers seeking to drain every shred of warmth from my spirit. Heart racing, I fought against the chill creeping over me. Panic gripped me. "We won't let you take us," I cried, my voice echoing louder than the howls of the shadows. Together, we surged forward. The children's lights danced around me, vibrant and pulsing like fireflies caught in an ecstatic frenzy. Suddenly, the shadow lunged, a mass of swirling darkness that engulfed the playground in a shroud of despair. It felt alive, an entity filled with rage, a swirling mass that tried to swallow us whole. I could almost hear its thoughts, bitter and twisted, as it hissed words of despair. "You will not escape. This is your fate. You belong to the dark." But I couldn't allow its words to seep into my mind. I focused on the warmth pulsing from within, letting it shine brighter as I shouted again. You have no power over me. I reached out toward the flickering lights around me, channeling their hopes and fears into my own. As if my words had struck a chord, a light flickered amongst the shadows, weak but noticeable. I could see the shapes of those once bound to the dark begin to shimmer, their forms growing clearer. They were not just faceless figures. They were scared children, lost and lonely, their eyes wide with fear, yet glinting with a desire to be free. The shadow raged, a booming voice echoing around us. You cannot save them. They are mine. No, I shouted back, bursting with conviction. We will break these chains. You're afraid of losing your hold on them. The shadows writhed, the first semblances of doubt creeping into their dark corners, fear mingling with their anger. I pressed on, conjuring every joyful memory I had. The laughter of friends, the warmth of the sun, the feeling of safety that had once surrounded me. With every thought, I felt my energy build, my light growing more intense. Simultaneously, the glowing children hesitated, their light flickering momentarily before growing stronger. They began to murmur amongst themselves, resonating with the hope I had discovered. Together, I urged, feeling my heart race as I stepped forward boldly. Reach for the light. It's what you deserve. The very air began to crackle with excitement. Little hands reached out, grasping the warmth of each other, binding us together. We took one collective step toward the shadow, the light pulsating between us like a heartbeat, stronger than fear. But the darkness, sensing its grip loosening, retaliated in fury. It twisted into a grotesque form, a ghastly parody of what once might have been a face, its eyes glowing with an unnatural fire. You will all suffer, it bellowed as shadows exploded around us, swirling with chaotic force, trying to swallow the light whole. For an instant, the brightness dimmed as waves of despair crashed around me, the voices of countless lost children melding into a cacophony of sorrow. I felt the urge to collapse, to fall back into the depths of despair, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. I clasped my hands together tightly, closing my eyes against the onslaught, drawing deep breaths to steady myself. Remember why you fight, I shouted, my voice raw. We are not alone. A shimmering glow erupted from the circle, casting away the tendrils of the shadow that clawed at us. The children beside me rallied, their voices rising in a melodic chant, harmonizing beautifully, drowning out the abyssal sounds with a symphony of defiance. We are here, they sang, their laughter echoing, filling the night with light. I could feel the shadows recoiling, the weight of their darkness lifting. No, the shadow howled in fury, but it was too late. The connection between us glowed brighter, pulsating like a heartbeat, forging a bond that even the darkest entities could not sever. The playground transformed around us, the rusty swings and broken slides twisting into shapes of light, shimmering like stars. I opened my eyes to witness the scene unfold. Colors burst forth, replacing the suffocating shades of gray with vibrant hues swirling around us. The darkness seemed to freeze for a brief moment, caught off guard by the unexpected display of unity and courage. But then a sharp pain shot through me. It was as if the darkness had found a weak spot, digging in deep, trying to tear apart the very fabric of the light we were weaving together. I stumbled back, fighting to remain upright as shadows clawed at my heart, their fingers icy, relentless. Yet in that moment of confusion, it was the children who stepped forward, their dim light flickering like brave little beacons. One by one, they began to chant, their voices merging into a single force. We are not afraid. We are not lost. We will shine. Their words ignited a fire deep within me, swelling until it burst forth anew. I stood taller, lifting my head against the encroaching darkness, reaching out to the spectral figures. You're stronger than this? I shouted. You can fight. As their light grew, I felt a visceral connection surge through us all. The shadows pulled back, hissing in anger, twisting and curling as their hold on the world began to fray. "Not again," they screamed, voices intertwining into a terrifying chorus, the ground trembling beneath us as they struggled. I felt the children around me reinvigorating their spirit, power spilling forth like a tidal wave of brilliance. With each swell of light, I pushed harder against the shadows, feeling the warmth suffusing my limbs, spreading through the darkness like a wildfire. "This ends now," I declared, allowing every fear, every ounce of pain to cascade out of me in a torrent. "No," the dark entity cried. "You cannot win. I am eternal." With one final, desperate yell, I thrust my hands forward, feeling that radiant glow burst forth in a blinding flash, sending the shadows reeling back like smoke in a fierce wind. The playground shimmered and swayed, collapsing inward, but not in despair, in transformation. The children's lights resonated so vibrantly now, filling the air, filling every hollow space in the night. They united, illuminating every corner, each beam born from their collective strength. The void of shadows unraveled like a fraying tapestry, caught in the fire of resolute purpose. But just as it seemed we had achieved the impossible, a chilling breeze swept over me. Something was off. The air felt heavy again, and I could sense that the shadows were not truly gone. They lingered, lurking just beyond the edge of our brightness, fragmented remnants longing to rejoin, ready to retaliate. Instinctively, I turned to face the flickering lights beside me. "Don't let go," I urged, panic creeping back in. "We have to remain together." But before they could respond, the ground beneath us began to tremble violently, cracking open with deep fissures that swallowed the light whole. I could see the tendrils of darkness reaching up from below, claws grasping hungrily, trying to drag us down into the depths. "Hold on," I shouted, feeling my grip slip as the edges of reality splintered around us. The light flickered, wavering, and fear gnawed at my heart once more. Yet somehow, even amidst the chaos, I saw the determination in the faces of the children beside me. They rallied, pulling closer together, their lights flickering with resilience. The chants resonated louder, a mixture of defiance and hope igniting a wave of energy that pushed against the invading darkness. "You," the shadowy entity screamed, the ground rumbling with its fury. "You think you can play puppeteer?" With a surge of adrenaline, I recognized this as our final chance. "This is a game we will win," I yelled, defiantly. I could feel the warmth of those around me, their lights reflecting my own, growing brighter than ever before. The shadows shrieked, the ominous energy thickening, wrapping around us like chains, but something in me snapped. "We will shine," I cried out, and with that, I gathered all my strength, blasting it forth like a supernova into the depths of the darkness unfurling beneath us. As light burst forth, I felt a strange energy surge through me, like a jolt of electricity tearing through shadows, creating a blinding explosion that sent fragments of darkness scattering everywhere. "We can break free," I urged, urging the children to push against the remaining grip of the darkness that loomed. The moment slowed. The shadows screamed in agony as light exploded all around, banishing the remnants of their presence back toward the abyss where they belonged. But deep down, something felt different. An unsettling feeling flashed in my gut, like a ghostly whisper echoing through my heart. There was more to this fight than I realized. Something bigger. Suddenly, the world felt unstable, the ground shivering beneath me as if ready to crumble away. I could see the figures of the children dimming, their lights flickering under the weight of the dark entity's last stand. "Stay with me," I shouted, but the strain and the fear began to seep into their expressions. "Please don't let go," I desperately urged as the darkness crackled back to life, tendrils reaching out to us once more. Even as the entity struggled against the light, I knew this wasn't a solid victory yet, and the shadows writhed in defiance, refusing to relinquish their hold. An ominous presence loomed over us, a dark silhouette merging with the deeper shadows, swirling together to form a more malevolent shape. I felt trapped between two worlds, the light and the dark, hope and despair. In that moment, I took a deep breath. We will face this together, I decided, feeling the tremors of fear cooling beneath the surface. The dark entity twisted into a grotesque visage, eyes flaring with a strange fixation that sent chills down my spine. You think you've won? You don't know the power of the abyss. I could feel waves of dread spilling into my mind, images of despair, loss, and hopelessness flooding my senses. It was different this time, a raw, primal fear. The memories clawed at me, trying to undermine my resolve. I couldn't let myself succumb. The flickering lights alongside me were my anchor. With one last surge of will, I stepped forward. You don't understand hope? I shouted, my voice steady as the ground beneath us quaked. With every ounce of energy, I drew from the courage surrounding me, channeling my fears into strength. As the shadows roared in frustration, I knew I had to confront what lay deeper beneath their surface. So I closed my eyes and felt it. The darkness wasn't just an absence of light. It thrived in stories of lost hopes, forgotten dreams, and the echoes of despair that tainted souls. But there was something deeper, a resonance, a thread connecting us all. All at once, I imagined their hopes, those trapped spirits, and channeled it through us. I let the colors of our light intertwine, putting the fear in my heart on display for the entity to see. Together, we can rewrite the darkness, I declared, letting the warmth radiate outward, transforming fear into a heartbeat of hope. And with that, I opened my eyes to witness the shadows rise and twist. Then suddenly, collapsing against the light, the very fabric of their being unraveling as the colorful light shone through the cracks. No, they cried, voices mingling into an echo of rage. But in that moment, the winds shifted, and I saw it. The true power of the light we possessed. The playground erupted in a kaleidoscope of brightness, and as the shadows waned, the air felt charged with energy. Something tangible, something real. I felt alive, free. But just as I reveled in that thought, I hardly noticed the shadow looming behind us, darker than anything we'd faced. And as my heart raced anew, feeling the scales shift, dread settled once more in the depths of my stomach. Not this, I gasped, realizing too late what was approaching. As the darkness surged, a new wave of horror struck, pulling tight around the joyous light we had forged together. The air turned cold, a palpable chill that crept into my bones, making my breath visible in small puffs of fog. My heart raced as I spun around, the laughter of the children behind me fading into eerie silence. The dark silhouette towered, larger and more menacing than before, swirling a tempest of shadows around itself like a cloak. Its eyes glinted with malice, deep and endless like bottomless pits, pulling me in. You thought you were strong? It sneered, the voice slithering into my ears. This is just the beginning. Prepare to feel despair. I felt every shadow pressing in, an unseen weight bearing down on me. The walls of the playground pulsing with a sinister heartbeat. Panic seized me as I realized the ground beneath my feet was shifting again, pulling me toward the darkness like a magnet, hungry to claim me. The children fell silent, their flickering lights sputtering in the face of this new horror. I turned to them, desperation flooding my veins. Stay close. We can't let it pull us apart. But even as I shouted, I could see doubt clouding their faces. The light they carried dimmed, shaking like leaves in a storm, just as this new threat fortified itself. It was as if the darkness was feeding off their fear, amplifying it, as if each frightened whisper echoed back to us. Don't give in, I shouted again, but the shadows tangled with my voice, turning it into a faint whisper lost in the wind. I felt an unseen energy snaking through the air, wrapping around my throat, squeezing tighter and tighter, making it hard to breathe. Visions of failure danced before me. I could see the laughter and joy of the children slipping away, replaced by haunting images of their silent screams. faces twisted in terror and shadows creeping over them. I pushed against the strange grip around my throat, heat rising in my cheeks as I realized what was happening. It's trying to isolate us, I thought. It's trying to break our bond. I couldn't allow that to happen. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, reminding myself of the warmth that had once filled this space. We've come too far to lose now, I cried, the words feeling like a desperate prayer. With everything inside me, I focused on the light that still flickered within each child around me, willing it to shine brighter, willing my strength to merge with theirs. The shadows wavered as I reached within myself, feeling the pulse of hope, the warmth of our bond radiating outward. Fight back, I urged, my voice barely audible, struggling against the grip around my throat. Don't let it take you. And then, all at once, the air exploded with energy. The children began to chant again, hesitant at first, but as my heart soared, so did their voices. Each word a tiny candle flickering against the malignant dark. The dark entity screamed, a blood-curdling sound that split the air, piercing the fabric of reality. It writhed in rage, shadows flickering wildly, trying to extinguish the hope igniting before it. The ground shook violently, cracks spiderwebbing outward like veins surging with dark blood. Join me, the entity bellowed, desperate to reclaim what it had once owned. Embrace the darkness. But I could see the fear transforming into resolve in the eyes of the children. No, they shouted in unison, voices rising to meet the dark's roar, defiance melding into strength. One by one, they took their steps forward, the air shimmering with each pulse of light they wielded. Look, I shouted, pointing toward the shifting ground and the way the shadows began to sizzle upon contact with our light. We are stronger together. And as if responding to my words, the flickering lights coalesced into brilliant beams, each child standing tall against the oppressive weight of despair that sought to crush us. Their courage swelled until the playground glowed like it had never done before, illuminating every festering shadow, each corner inhabited by fear. But the dark entity wasn't done yet. With a forceful surge, it lashed out, tendrils of darkness writhing like snakes, seeking to strike those who dared challenge it. I felt its icy tendrils graze my arms, grabbing hold of the children beside me, pulling them, dragging them back into the abyss. Help! One of them cried out, their light dimming as shadows clawed at him, a panic rising that sent chills through my spine. Stay together, I yelled, extending my hand toward them, grasping for them in a desperate attempt to pull them back into the light. Don't let go. Hold on to me. A fierce wind whipped around us, cutting like knives, drowning out the chants with its ominous wails. The playground was morphing, swings twisting into grotesque shapes, slides curling into dark cavities that beckoned the children forth with promises of safety. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me again, more unstable than ever, like quicksand eager to swallow us whole. Then, through the chaos, I caught a glimpse of the children's eyes. They were filled with fear, but also a fierce determination. With every ounce of their remaining strength, they grasped onto me, gripping my arms tightly, their lights intertwining with mine until colors radiated brightly, a shield against the dark. Together, we shouted, and the wall of brightness surged forth like a tidal wave. The shadows howled in agony, retreating momentarily as light burst forth. I could feel their fury, the tempest rising again, building with a force that threatened to tear the ground apart. Yet, even with all that fury, darkness couldn't touch us now. With every heart that radiated hope, we pushed back harder, reclaiming the playground with every chant, each heart beating in time with the light we wielded. But just when I thought we might win, reality shifted, the very essence of the night coiling tighter around us. I sensed something lurking just beyond the light, something more sinister, deeper, a flicker of hope snuffed out before it ever had a chance to bloom. With a final desperate roar, the dark entity lunged again, and it felt as if time had come to a standstill. The shadows split, creating a chasm that rippled with an unreal energy, and from it, a shape emerged. A figure more horrific than any I had faced, cloaked in malice, its eyes resembling bottomless pits fueled by darkness and despair. "No," I whispered, horror coiling in my gut. "What is that?" It rose before us, its presence sucking the warmth from the air, bringing with it an unsettling stillness, an anticipation thick enough to suffocate. The children huddled closer, voices trembling, their lights flickering as they absorbed this new horror. Through the chaos, I felt a tug in my heart, the unreal desire to flee. I fought against it, forcing myself to meet the malevolent glare of the dark figure. "We will not be afraid," I declared, though my voice shook as the creature's gaze bore into my soul, stripping away layers of resolve like peeling paint. In a moment that felt like an eternity, the shadows around the figure morphed into fragmented faces, each one twisted and tormented, their horror palpable, a terrible reminder of what could happen if we lost this fight. I wanted to look away, but couldn't. This was a moment in time, a deep well of suffering that lingered like a dark cloud. The creature's voice, low and reverberating, beckoned with a softness that made my skin crawl. "Do you feel it? The weight of despair? I can give you what you truly desire. A world where the light never reaches you." "No!" I screamed, my voice rising above the murmur of shadows. "We choose hope. We choose to fight." But even as I shouted, something in me faltered. I felt the shadows tugging at my heartstrings, tempting me with the offer of being free from this struggle, free from the pain of loss and fear. The darkness was alluring, even seductive, whispering promises that rang true in my bones. The children around me gasped as the dark figure prowled closer, tendrils reaching out, trying to ensnare them with those very same offers, marketing despair like a twisted dream. I could feel the air heavy with their uncertainty, their flickering lights dimming under the insufferable weight of temptation. Desperation clawed at my throat like razor blades. "No, fight it," I urged, turning my back on the figure that sent terror coursing through my veins. "Remember who you are. Remember why we started this." As I faced the pulsating darkness, I drew from the light still flickering beside me, wrestling against the urge to join the shadows. I intertwined my hands in a desperate plea for unity, igniting the warm glow between us again, hoping to rekindle the strength that had begun to falter. The dark figure, sensing our resolve, contorted its face in fury. "You think you can resist me? I will take you all." Darkness billowed around us, the shadows coiling with malice as I felt the energy shift. I pushed harder against it, desperately seeking the strength in every voice around me. "Stand firm against it," I shouted, even as my heart raced in uncertainty. A sudden chill swept over the playground, catching me off guard. The shadows thickened, wrapping around us like chains, pulling tighter and tighter. I caught glimpses of menacing smiles hidden in the storm, cold fingers attempting to pry our connection apart, like malicious spirits intent on devouring the light. I thought I saw a child falter, their glow almost extinguished. "Don't let go," I cried, and the strength of their flickering flame surged back, a reminder of their courage feeding back into me, rekindling the fire that leathered on the edge of despair. In a final attempt to push through, I lunged toward the dark figure, arms raised, light bursting forth from my core, as bright as the sun cutting through the night. "We have the power of each other," I yelled, trembling against the tide of darkness. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of sound drowning my words as I concentrated on the flickering lights surrounding me. I could feel their fear blending into determination, feeding the glow that rippled through the air, rattling the gloom that threatened to consume everything. And then, for a moment, the darkness wavered. I saw it. The fear within the figure, the way its twisted visage faltered as if unsure of itself. "You cannot change fate," it screeched, its voice cracking under the strain. Yet something inside me ignited. "Fate is ours to write," I roared, feeling that spark ignite into an inferno. Light surged forth like a wave, crashing against the dark entity, bright and fierce. Shadows began to unravel at the seams, the tendrils tearing apart as they fought tirelessly against the growing flood of our unity. I felt euphoria wash over me, the darkness weakening, and I thought we might finally be winning. But just as I reached out to grasp the radiant hope surrounding me, the dark figure lunged forward, its jagged fangs bared, an insatiable hunger flickering in its eyes. I braced myself, heart pounding. "No!" I screamed, my voice lost among the chaos. And in that moment, the playground erupted into a kaleidoscope of light, each child joining me in a final surge against the darkness. It was the moment of reckoning, of liberation, or the gravest defeat. As shadows screeched in terror, I felt everything shift as our hearts beat fiercely together, pulling our radiant energy into the fray. The air crackled with energy as our lights fused into one, glowing like the sun itself. "This ends now," I shouted, feeling the force of hope lift us, flooding every crevice in the depths of despair. I felt the shadows part, fleeting, just as my heart threatened to leap free. As I gripped the hands of the children beside me, I caught a glimpse of freedom just beyond the grasp of the darkness. The grotesque entity roared in defeat and fury as our light consumed it, chasing shadows away, sending silence echoing into the void. But even amidst the fray, I felt that sickening sense of dread linger, like a shadow just beyond light. What if this was only the beginning? I could feel the darkness thrumming beyond the edge of consciousness, an undercurrent of fear that whispered through the air like a lullaby for lost souls. Something deep within warned me. This battle might end, but the war was far from over. And just when I thought we had claimed victory, a sinister laugh echoed through the night, chilling the very air around us. "Do you really think you've escaped?" the voice taunted, slithering around the remnants of light we clutched so fiercely. In the heart of darkness, I felt it, a presence swirling with insatiable hunger, promising that the whispers of despair would never truly fade. As that ominous laugh echoed around me, a cold wave of terror washed over. The shadows seemed to pulse, slithering against the ground like serpents tasting the air, and I could feel their eyes watching, waiting, hungry for the chance to strike back. I tightened my grip on the children beside me, trying to anchor myself in the moment. "Stay close," I breathed, my voice lowering to a tense whisper. "We're stronger together." But even as I spoke, doubt gnawed at me. What if the darkness wasn't finished? What if it could strike from anywhere, hidden behind any corner, waiting for the walls of our unity to crack? With every heartbeat, I felt the air grow thick with potential danger, pressing in like a weight on my chest. I glanced around the playground, which now felt like a warped reflection of its former self. The swings creaked as if haunted, swaying gently despite the still air. Shadows writhed along the ground, creeping toward us like grasping fingers eager to pull us into the abyss. Then came a sound that sent chills racing through my body, soft childlike laughter, echoing eerily in the distance. But it wasn't the sound of excitement or joy. It felt hollow, twisted. I strained to see where it was coming from, but darkness obscured any sign of life, any glimmer of hope. "Did you hear that?" I murmured, turning to the children. Their wide eyes mirrored my fear, uncertainty flooding the air between us. "Maybe it's a trap," one of them whispered, trembling as they took a step back. I could feel the fear pulsing through the group, and I fought against the rising panic that threatened to spill over. We had to stay united, or we would lose everything we had fought for. The laughter swelled, then faded. I took a step forward, compelled by a strange force that called to me. "We have to see," I urged. "It could be something that can help us." Reluctantly, the kids followed, their flickering lights casting strange shadows that danced erratically against the dark. With each step, the ground beneath us felt less stable, like walking on shifting sand as we moved deeper into the playground's depths. Then, out of the darkness, I spotted something moving, a figure standing just beyond the reach of our light. My heart raced as I strained to see, and as it stepped forward, a jolt of horror shot through me. It was a child, maybe no older than 8, with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the light around them. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its bones. A face that once might have been innocent twisted into an expression of pure malice. "Help us," it said, but the voice was wrong, too hollow, devoid of warmth. The words hung in the air, filled with an unsettling echo that made my skin crawl. "Don't listen," I shouted, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. "It's a trick." But the child's lips curled into an eerie smile, and with every blink, its form shifted, flickering like a dying light bulb. "Join me," it said again, beckoning with a bony finger. "There's no escape. We can play forever in the dark." The other children began to tremble. I looked at their faces, and for a moment, I saw the flicker of doubt. They were tempted, pulled in by the promise of safety in the shadows. "No!" I snapped, stepping forward. "We don't want to play in the dark." It wasn't just a voice of defiance. It was a plea to pull them back from the edge. "Come back! Remember who you are!" But the figure laughed again, that same twisted sound echoing through the darkness. "You think you can resist? I was once like you, lost and scared. Come with me, and you'll never feel fear again." For a brief moment, the shadows flickered, and I saw faces behind the figure, children trapped in that same expression of despair. They reached out toward me with hands that were more shadow than flesh, silent cries lingering on their lips as they ripped at the very fabric of reality. "No!" I pressed a hand to my heart, a rush of adrenaline flooding my veins. "We will not fall into despair." Rage ignited within me, pushing back against the suffocating chill that wrapped around us. I couldn't let them win. I raised my arms, willing the light to surge forth, to banish the facade of that sinister child. The glow from my fingertips pulsed stronger, cutting through the gloom. The trickster blinked, shadows recoiling from my light as I fell deeper into focus. "We are not alone. We carry hope," I shouted, my determination breaking through the mist of fear that lingered like a suffocating fog. But the smile on the twisted child only widened, revealing teeth too sharp and too numerous, each one glinting ominously in the dim light. "Hope," it mocked, its voice like nails dragging across metal. "You really think you can fight what is already inside you?" Suddenly, I felt a crushing weight pushing down on us, like a cold hand squeezing the air from my lungs. The darkness erupted into a deluge, tendrils wrapping around my legs, pulling me down. I staggered, struggling to keep my footing as darkness clawed at my skin, wrapping its tendrils around my mind. I breathed heavily, fighting against the shadows that encircled me, driving away any lingering hope. They whispered my fears back to me, my deepest regrets, my failures, echoing louder and louder until I felt ready to crumble. "You will never escape," the laughing child said, its hollow eyes glimmering with victory. "You belong to me now." "Stop it," I cried, my voice breaking as I fought through the fog. "I won't let you take me." But the darkness surged, crashing in like a wave that swept me off my feet, and I felt the world closing in. Just as despair clawed its way to the surface, a flicker of warmth flickered in my chest. The children were holding tightly to me, their own lights shimmering as they clung fiercely to their hope. "No!" I roared, summoning that light, channeling everything I had left, into a beacon to slice through the oppressive shadows. "We will not let this end here." With a burst of energy, our combined lights flared brighter, shimmering in a brilliant display. The darkness screeched, and I felt its grasp weaken as the shadows recoiled from the light. But just as I thought we'd gained the upper hand, a sudden stillness fell over us. Time seemed to freeze, the shadows holding their breath, as a new presence emerged from the abyss. Something larger than I had ever faced, woven into the very fabric of the night. An enormous shape took form, grotesque and formless, eyes glowing like molten gold, piercing through the darkness with an insatiable hunger. It towered over us, the darkness swirling around it, feeding off the fear in the air. "Give in," it rumbled, its voice a low growl that vibrated through my bones. Join the eternal night. I felt paralyzed, every instinct screaming to run, and yet I stood, anchored by the light of the children clinging to my side. They needed me, just as I needed them. This wasn't merely a battle against the dark. This was a fight for our very souls. Together, I shouted, struggling to maintain my stance against the engulfing shadows. We won't let fear win. As those words erupted from my lips, the ground shook, a fracture snaking through the playground as the light expanded outward, challenging the looming darkness. Each child's flicker grew brighter, their spirits igniting like stars across the night sky, chasing away the echoes of despair that lingered. But the larger entity shifted, its eyes narrowing with a chilling intensity. You cannot escape true nature, it hissed, like a whisper curling into a snarl. Join me, and I will show you the depths of your fear. You will understand. Suddenly, I was hit with images, visions of shadows creeping into my past, my failures, the moments where I thought I was defeated. They swirled around me, tempting me to take one step back into the darkness. I could see my family, faces filled with sorrow, shades of disappointment clouding their joy. You'll never be stronger than the abyss, it taunted, the memories unraveling in front of me with each pulse of darkness. No! I screamed, the darkness sneaking into my thoughts, clawing at my heart as it threatened to drag me down. I had to fight back. With one last surge, I ignited every bit of strength and love I felt, channeling that energy into a blinding flash. We refused to give in, I cried, feeling the ground beneath me crack as our combined lights surged forward, battling against the overpowering darkness. The shadow shifted and screamed, a furious wail that rattled the air, echoing in my bones. Brightness exploded in a whirl of color that painted the playground, illuminating every crevice that darkness had touched. But then I saw it, the shattering darkness reforming into swirling shadows, a deeper, more malignant force that roared back, feeding on our fear, still hungry for despair. And as I braced for an onslaught, I couldn't help but feel the weight of uncertainty lurking in the back of my mind. Could we really defeat this? Would it ever end? Then another chilling laugh echoed, this time different, darker, a sickening blend of countless voices, all warped and twisted by sorrow. You can't escape me, it howled, reverberating through the playground, shaking the very foundation of reality. With dread pooling in my stomach, I realized that beneath the surface light, the shadows were morphing, readying for a final assault. And in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness had merely been biding its time, waiting for its moment to strike back. Without warning, the shadows lunged toward me, tendrils of darkness surging with ferocity, eager to drag me into their depths. I steeled my resolve, knowing that now, more than ever, I had to harness the glimmer of hope that remained. As the world around me shook, I couldn't let panic consume me. I summoned every last drop of courage from within my heart and the flickering lights around me, willing them to form a barrier against the consuming void. Together, I shouted once more, feeling the glow of the children surge through me as bright as the sun. We are the light. And then the playground erupted into brilliance, a radiant explosion of colors that pierced through the shadows, scattering them like dust in the wind. But just as I exhaled in relief, the shadows twisted back, dark claws reaching out, reforming with a vengeance that shook the very ground beneath our feet. In that moment, I knew this fight wasn't just for ourselves. It was a fight for all those lost in darkness, and we couldn't back down now. With the shadows closing in, I took a deep breath, grounding myself with the knowledge of our unity. We will write our own tale, I declared, bracing myself against the furious wave of darkness that threatened to swallow us whole. And so the battle raged on, caught in the eternal struggle between despair and hope, light and darkness, as we faced the darkness that demanded to claim our souls. The darkness surged like a living entity, a writhing mass hungry for us, and my heart pounded as I fought to keep my ground. The children's lights flickered wildly, casting eerie shapes that danced along the ground, creating grotesque shadows that seemed to mock us. I felt a chill run down my spine, a reminder that with every step back we took, we risked losing ourselves to this suffocating void. "Focus!" I shouted, drawing on every ounce of strength I had left. My voice echoed, but it barely cut through the terror that enveloped us. The air thickened, stinging with an unsettling mix of fear and despair, pushing against my chest as if trying to snuff out our light. I could see the panic in the children's eyes, their tiny hands trembling, and I knew that we had to resist the overwhelming urge to flee. One child, a brave girl with curls framing her anxious face, stepped forward. "We can't let it take us. We won't disappear." Her voice rang out like a fragile bell, but it was a spark I desperately needed. I nodded, feeling that familiar warmth spreading in my chest. "Right," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "We must hold on to that spark. Together, we can fend it off." Yet as those words fell from my lips, the shadows coalesced into a figure, one I recognized. It was my reflection, twisted and warped, eyes hollow and cold. It loomed before me, dripping with darkness that pooled at its feet, a cruel mimicry of my own self. "Is this who you really are?" it taunted, flinging my insecurities into the open. Images flashed behind its eyes, moments of failure, times I felt small, every breath of doubt echoing like a dirge. "You belong with me, don't you?" it hissed, the shadows swirling around it, eager to pull me in. "No," I cried, stepping back, my own voice nearly lost to the chaos around us. Remembering the kids, I turned to them with fervor. "That isn't me. That's just a shadow." But even as I spoke those words, doubt crept in, like ivy curling around my heart. What if I was meant to be lost like the figure just in front of me? What if there was no escaping that unending darkness? Before I had the chance to linger on those thoughts, the shadow self dashed forward, a darkness that felt tangible and alive. Its hands, stretching long and clawed, reached for me, ready to drag me down into the void where all light would flicker out. The children screamed, their lights wavering as the shadows crept closer, suffocating and smothering every glimmer of hope in the air. I felt the doubt clawing at the edges of my sanity, but when I looked at their faces, I knew I couldn't let fear win. "Hold on to the light," I shouted, my voice trembling but full of purpose. I reached out to grasp the hands of the brave girl and another child, feeling their energy pulse through me. "We are stronger together. We can fight this." With every word, I gathered my strength, my spirit igniting like dry grass before a fire. I concentrated as fiercely as I could, drawing together every flickering light between us, feeling it swell and bloom in a radiance that turned the suffocating shadows to mist. The air grew hot with our energy, radiating warmth that pushed against the curling darkness. "We are the light," I declared, and the ground trembled beneath us, the playground quaking as our combined brightness flared, struggling against the relentless void. Shadows shrieked, a cacophony of hate that filled the night, desperate to drown our defiance. But then, just as it seemed we might pull through, a powerful wind swept through the playground, extinguishing our lights like snuff candles. The chill pressed in, snaking around us, penetrating every crack of our gathered strength. I glanced around in horror. The shadows twisted, transforming and morphing, rising like a tide that threatened to swallow us whole. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of lost cries calling for acceptance, for surrender. "Come join us," they echoed, voices intertwined, 1,000 broken souls mingling in a chorus filled with sorrow. In that moment, I felt the despair pressing against me, slick and heavy, like a fog that suffocated every thought. Everything I had clung to began to slip away, memories flashing by so fast that I couldn't grasp them, each one tainted by a sense of loss. I saw the things I never accomplished, the goals I let slip through my fingers, the faces of those I loved, frozen in time, longing for a different version of me, one that didn't shrink under pressure. "Let go," the shadows whispered, their voices seductive in their allure. "It's easier if you just give in." But deep within me, a flicker of resolve ignited, breaking through the heavy veil. "No!" I screamed, feeling the warmth rise again. "I refuse." With a forceful motion, I reached deep within myself, channeling every ounce of love and determination I had left. The light inside me flared bright, a blinding beacon cutting through the chaos, pushing back against the cull of darkness. "Together, now!" I shouted, feeling the children respond, their small hands lighting up like stars against the night. As the wave of light surged from us, the ground shook violently, our brilliance pushing violently against the shadows that hovered, desperate for a claim. The darkness screeched, a banshee wail that rattled my bones, the echoes reverberating all around us. But the shadows kept reforming, a relentless tide against the glowing marshmallow of light. The air felt electric, thick with tension as the darkness pulsated, trying to regain a foothold. "What if the darkness is part of who we are?" whispered a voice from the shadowed figure, eyes glinting with something dark and predatory, mocking yet tempting. "What if you let it in and stop fighting?" That thought gnawed at me. There was a truth there, and I felt my heart race with uncertainty. Would it really be easier to surrender, to tread the path of least resistance? "No," I gasped, shaking my head, grounding myself in the warmth of the children's lights. "I won't let this win. We are more than this shadow." With that, I let every feeling of love, every connection, unspool from within me, pouring them into the light. The playground erupted in a cacophony of brightness, lighting up things previously unseen, revealing the full extent of the darkness that surrounded us. All around, I witnessed the shapes of countless figures, lost souls trapped within this twisted playground, their faces etched with despair. They lingered at the edges, hovering, waiting for any moment of weakness to strike, their mouths opening and closing in silent screams. I staggered, the reality of it hitting me hard. This wasn't just a fight for my freedom. This was a rescue mission. I felt the urgency rush through me like a freight train, unyielding and powerful. "We have to help them," I urged, directing my voice to the children. "They're suffering just like we are. We can save them together." "Save?" the shadow figure mocked, creeping closer, sneering at me as it circled, cutting through the light bit by bit. "There is no salvation here, only darkness and despair. You will end up like them, lost forever." But my resolve solidified. I took a deep breath, and I spoke to the souls trapped in the abyss. "You don't have to stay trapped. You have the power to break free. Join our light. Remember who you are." The plea echoed, and just like that, a tremor of uncertainty rippled through the darkness. Faces turned toward me, the children's lights flickering brighter in response, urging those lost souls to step into the light. Suddenly, another bright voice piped up. One of the children beside me joined in, echoing my message with fervor. "You're not alone. Come with us." The shadows hesitated, their forms flickering. The air shimmered with potential as the creatures around us writhed, uncertainty flickering in the twisted forms. "Join the light," I shouted again, my voice ringing high above the chaos, and slowly, one by one, the lost souls began to edge toward us. The darkness pulled at them, desperately trying to maintain its grip, but each flicker of light grew stronger, igniting hope in the hearts that had long been overshadowed by despair. Our lights intertwined with theirs, creating a radiant glow that flickered fiercely against the gnawing void, threads of warmth breaking through the chilling grip of the darkness. With every soul that joined us, the shadows wriggled more violently, their hold weakening and deflating as if it were a balloon slowly losing air. I could feel a palpable shift in the air around us, a lifting sensation that promised a renewed chance. "Look, we're doing it," I urged, feeling the energy shift, our combined light pushing the shadows further away. But the larger shadow figure grew enraged, furiously shifting closer, It let out a roar that rattled my bones, shaking the very ground beneath my feet. "Fools!" it screamed, trembling the air. "You cannot save them all. They are mine." In that wild moment, I realized this wasn't just a battle of light against dark. It was a reckoning, the culmination of choices made in a realm that thrived on fear and regret. I took a step forward, despite the overwhelming presence before me, drawing strength from the children's lights surrounding me. They are worth saving. We are. And I surged, the energy swelling from deep within, exploding outward in a brilliant flash that consumed the dark figure. The shadows writhed and recoiled, but I felt the resolve of the children beside me, their voices hanging in the air with incalculable power. Together, we channeled everything we had, throwing the last remnants of despair back and reclaiming what was ours. Suddenly, the playground shook with a violent intensity, the air full of a blinding spark until, with a heartbeat, something shattered, a ripple of resonance that surged through the shadows. Screams rent the night, and the darkness began to retreat, unraveling before the light, fraying at the seams. But in that moment of chaos and light, I could see that the fight was not over. Just beyond, lurking within the shifting shadows, something deeper and more malignant stirred, waiting in the dark. Corners of the playground, lurking just out of sight, biding its time until it would strike back. Waiting in the dark corners of the playground, lurking just out of sight, biding its time until it would strike back. I felt the tension in the air shift as the shadows whispered among themselves, their frustrated hisses rising into a frenzy. A chill crept up my spine, a sense of profound dread settling over me like a thick fog. I looked around, trying to gauge the children's expressions, but their faces were pale and wide-eyed, reflecting back the uncertainty that gnawed at my own gut. "Keep shining," I urged, my voice barely above a whisper, because I knew whatever was coming would be worse than what we had already faced. The intensity of the darkness felt almost sentient, sizing us up, searching for weakness like a predator stalking prey. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was waiting for the moment we dropped our guard. Suddenly, the air thickened with a warmth that turned bitter, like the aftermath of a fire. The playground. It felt more alive than before, every swing creaking ominously, and the grass beneath our feet seeming to breathe heavily, as if the entire place held its breath, waiting for the inevitable climax of this impending clash. Panic tightened my throat. I glanced down the slide, the way it loomed like an inviting chasm. Deathly quiet, it seemed darker now, shadows pooling at its base, beckoning me with a haunting whisper, something that felt almost familiar. "Join us," it seemed to say. "Give in to the dark." "No," I hissed, shaking my head as if I could physically tear myself from the grip of that temptation. Just then, I noticed faint figures inching around the edges of the playground, former lost souls that had partially turned back to the shadows. They hovered just beyond our circle of light, their faces pale and twisted, a cacophony of grief echoing from them. "Help us. We can't remember," one of them muttered, its voice raw and almost desperate, a fragmented plea. It was a soul tethered between realms, tormented by shadows still whispering their impossible promises. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing light to swirl around me, grappling for control, for the grip of hope that I desperately needed. "Don't listen," I shouted at everyone, shifting my focus back to the children. "You are stronger than this. Remember who you are." Each of them squeezed their fists, their lights pulsating with vigor. But the dark figures remained stubborn, their hollow eyes locking onto mine, searching for the flicker of doubt, hoping that I wavered. The shadows deepened, turning the playground into a distorted reflection of what it used to be. The swings creaked like restless ghosts, and the eerie laughter of past days echoed between the bars of the jungle gym, taunting me, reminding me of fleeting joy now long gone. A ripping sound sliced through the air, a jagged rending that echoed like nails on a chalkboard. My heart raced as distortions rose from the shadows behind the figures, twisting and contorting into forms that lurked deeper, darker, in the spaces where light could not penetrate. They were grotesque carnal shapes, with spindly limbs stretching impossibly long, crawling across the ground as they emerged from the abyss. "We will take you," they hissed, two voices blending into one, no longer human, just a hungry sound that slithered into my mind. Fear clawed at me, but I forced myself to stay steady. "We won't go," I shouted again. The shadows receded just a fraction, faces twisting as they hesitated, momentarily confused by our defiance. But those grotesque forms quickly began to regroup, their bodies melding in and out of reality, the sharp edges of their limbs making sickly crunches as they shifted. I watched in horror as their limbs bent unnaturally, twisting around my arms as though ready to pull me into the blackened earth beneath us, a grave crafted for the lost. "Fight!" I urged the children, dread pooling in my gut. "Fight!" In that moment, I felt a shift in energy. A sudden gust howled through the playground, roaring like a thunderstorm, tearing at my skin with its cold touch. The chaotic dance of light expanded, illuminating our surroundings like fireflies in an impenetrable night, as the children's lights surged around me like a protective barrier. I felt the ground tremble beneath us, an ominous warning sign as the shadow beings shrieked in defiance. I could see their eyes wider, contorting into horrified shapes, as the tides of hope pushed against the waves of despair. They didn't want us to remember, and their fear of our light fueled a wild frenzy. The playground twisted, swings creaking, as a pulsing shadow grew in ever-sickening shape. "Stand firm," I shouted, though inside I felt panic rising. A shadow lunged toward me, dark claws reaching with lethal intent, just inches from my body. I reacted instinctively, my hand shooting up, sending shards of light from within, exploding outward with all the energy I could muster. The essence of my light crashed against the beast, the two forces colliding in a thunderous explosion that sent ripples of energy cascading through the air. The playground shuddered, a mix of brilliance and darkness swirling together as the shadows clawed at me, angry and desperate. But as the light flared, I glimpsed something horrifying. It was not just shadowy forms emerging, but faces I once recognized, twisted and contorted with agony. Friends, family, faces from my past gazed back at me, eyes empty and soulless. "Join us," they whispered in a chorus that chilled my heart, their voices carrying the weight of regret. "You cannot fight who you are." "No!" I screamed, my voice cutting through their seductive plea. "You don't have to be lost." I fought through my fear, heart hammering as the shadowy tendrils reached for me. "Remember the light, wait for me. We can break free." With renewed determination, I stepped closer to the circle of darkness, raising my voice so all could hear me. "We can win this. We are not only made of shadows. There is light within each of us." The darkness recoiled, my words echoing back in frustration, sparking confusion among them. But then came a surge of anger, sharper than any blade, as the shadows congealed into a massive form looming above me, the air turning oppressive enough to choke. It opened its mouth wide, revealing endless void lined with the faces of the damned, still trapped, still mourning their escape. "You will become like us," it bellowed, the voice resonating deep inside my bones. "You'll join us soon enough." Suddenly, I felt the weight of despair clawing at my heart, desperately trying to pull me down into the shadows. A wave of unease washed over me, and I stumbled back, my confidence wavering. I could hear the children gasping, their lights dimming just slightly as uncertainty crept in. The darkness seized the moment, coiling closer, wrapping like fog around my core. Then something caught my eye, a glimmer beyond the monstrous figure, amidst the chaos. A smaller soul stood marooned at the edge of the playground, a child lost within the shadows. "Help me!" it cried, its wide eyes reflecting pure terror. That cry sent fresh urgency through my veins, shaking me to the core. I looked back at the shape of darkness before me, fury and madness swirling within it, and felt new determination surging. "We can't leave it!" I shouted, my voice slicing, through the heavy air. I turned back to the other children, holding tight onto hope. For that child, we need to act now. Together, we surged forward, channeling every flicker of strength into a vibrant wave of brilliance, exploding outward in a luminous storm aimed at that shadow beast. The air crackled and shimmered, our collective force rising to meet the mounting darkness. We wouldn't let fear swallow us whole. In that critical moment, the child lost within the shadows extended its hands, reaching fearlessly toward ours. They connected, and suddenly the ground surged with an unimaginable power, a flood of lights piercing through the thick veil of despair. The shadows shrieked, recoiling violently. It was as if our combined light had wrenched open a portal, exposing the darkness for what it truly was. Nothing but a hollow specter, fiercely protective of its illusions. We would push it back, but just as we surged forward, I felt a sharp, insidious chill trailing down my spine. When I looked back, the monstrous shadow, now blinded by our combining light, began to twist in angry resolve. Its form distorted, revealing something darker lurking behind. "Fools!" it roared, convulsing as the shadows clawed at itself. "You seek to escape. There is no way out." That familiar, distorted laughter echoed, then transformed into a haunting melody that wrapped around me. I felt the grip of despair hardening like ice encasing my heart. Suddenly, the playground erupted around us, dark limbs grasping at the beams of light, the laughter morphing into screams that vibrated in the air, a torrent of tortured souls, writhing painfully as they surged toward me. Unexpectedly, the world came alive with a cacophony of despair. Ghostly figures twisted into grotesque shapes around me, caught in a cycle of anguish and regret. Their mouths opened and closed silently, but I could hear their cries in my mind, echoing deep within my heart like a haunting lullaby. I became overwhelmed by the tragic weight of their suffering, a mass of souls desperate to escape. The reality of that moment crashed down on me, the very air thick with desperation and panic, suffocating. I felt the cold shadow grip my throat, squeezing tighter as I fought to breathe. It was here, in the heart of this nightmare, that I realized the shadows were not simply trying to consume me. They were feeding off the pain and darkness buried in my own heart, the insecurities and regrets that had festered over time. I struggled against the tendrils of sorrow wrapping around me, fighting back tears as I focused on the glowing light of the children beside me. Their faces held a fierce determination, reflecting the bond of our shared hope. Together, we drew strength from one another, and I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let the darkness win. "Remember the light. Hold on to it," I shouted, my voice cutting through the echoes of despair. The shadows recoiled, angry that their hold on me was slipping. The cries of tortured souls crescendoed, forming a grotesque symphony of despair. As I reached for the child, trapped in the dark, I felt a pulse of warmth within me, a flicker of light that ignited when I allowed love and hope to overshadow my fears. "We won't give in," I declared again, desperate to claw my way out of the suffocating shadows. Drawing in a deep breath, I summoned every ounce of strength within me, blasting forward with a radiant light that exploded outward. The shadows trembled, their forms distorting as they drew back from the intensity. Every flicker of hope surged like a tidal wave as I remembered the joyous memories that once filled my heart. The laughter of friends, the warmth of family, the moments that made life worth living. They coursed through me, bolstering my resolve. Suddenly, the playground erupted in a blinding light, illuminating the grotesque figures that had once seemed so powerful. I could see their forms flicker, unstable, instead of terrifying. They were just lost souls wandering in the dark, and the truth of their vulnerability struck home. I pressed forward, pushing my light toward the darkness, refusing to let fear guide my actions any longer. One by one, the silhouettes of sorrow began to falter, their twisted features melting away as if shedding the weight of their torment. The anguished cries fell silent, replaced by the soft whispers of gratitude that hummed in the air. The dark shape that had loomed so threateningly fractured, its edges dissolving into the ether, leaving only a sense of empty sorrow. The weight upon my heart began to lift, and I felt a rush of exhilaration as the darkness collapsed in on itself, engulfing the cries that had echoed for generations. In that pivotal moment, I realized that light was not just a weapon, it was liberation. Every glowing heartbeat around me pulsed with strength. The children, the lost souls, everyone was awakening to the power of hope. Together, we had transformed this playground, once a place of fear, into a sanctuary of healing. I felt the warmth spread through me, wrapping me in a cocoon of love as the last remnants of shadows dissipated into the night. Exhale followed inhale, a cathartic release of everything I held inside. I looked around at the playground, now shimmering with light, revealing familiar landmarks from happier days. No longer twisted and ominous, it was vibrant and alive, filled with possibilities. Together, we had triumphed, not just over the shadows outside, but over the ones within ourselves. As the last echoes of darkness faded away, I stood there with the children, breathing in the renewal of hope. The playground was safe now, a sanctuary where joy could bloom. I realized the shadows belonged to the past, a necessary journey that brought us here, to this moment of shared freedom. The victory was bittersweet, yet filled with light. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I was no longer terrified of what lay in wait. I had faced the darkness and emerged, and I felt empowered to step into whatever came next. In the twilight, I turned to the remaining children, their faces bright with relief and joy. Together, we'll always be strong, I promised, knowing that the bonds we forged in the depths of despair would shine brighter than any shadow. When I took my final glance back at the once menacing playground, now choked with the remnants of fear and regret, I felt a surge of gratitude rise within me. Here, among friends, I had faced the shadows and danced with my demons, and my soul felt light. The journey had carved my spirit into something stronger. Together, we moved forward, embracing the light, ready to illuminate the world.